There we are. Look how live we are. It's the pre-show, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're just sort of getting things going here. This is the pre-show for today's SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. Oh, and it's hot in here. And the lights are on. You turn those lights on, and it gets warm quick. So bear with me a moment while I plug away at my Nest. All right, let's take it down to a reasonable temperature. That looks really good. My headphones aren't on, so I don't even know if I'm here. Hey, chat room. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. We've got all Network Plus Q&A in this first hour. I'll be asking questions of you, so stick around. And then in the after show, which is after that, we will we'll open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. We'll do all kinds of fun stuff. It'll be great. Her, buddy. Oh, how is everybody where everybody is? Hopefully everybody doing okay. Today's Security Plus, not Network Plus. Network Plus was last week. The replay is available on demand. Cameras look good. Recordings are going. I've already done the podcast content, so we're good there. Don't be stressed for Security Plus. It's all in the exam objectives. Everything is there. Okay, so let's pop open the chat so I can actually see it without moving my head way over there. Come here, chat. No, there you go. And you need to be there. And then the rest of this needs to be over here. No, on the left side, the right side. There we go. Oh, Jennifer got your Security Plus certificate this month. Congratulations. That is fantastic. Did you take the 501 or the 601? I'm interested to know. I'm curious. I'll want to know. What else do we need to get ready to go? Do I have my circle up? I don't. We need to put the little circle around my... There we go. Very nice. Jennifer passed the 501. Congratulations. That is phenomenal. Right at the end of Security Plus of the 501. Snuck it right in there. I think that's the easier one to take. But now we're getting near the end of the month, aren't we? It's almost the 31st, and it will retire. So that's how that goes. Hello, Virginia Beach in Texas and St. Vincent and West St. Paul, Minnesota. Good to have you here. Now, why do I have bunches of chats going on now? That is not what I wanted. That's not what I was shooting for. Oh, man. It's always a thing. There we go. I'm popping out the wrong chat. We're looking at the wrong thing. Trying to figure it out. Hey, New York City. New York City. Will attending this study group count towards the EC Council continuing education program? I have no idea. That's really a question for the EC Council, of which I spend zero time spending any worry with. I don't look into their things, period. Not interested at all in what they are offering. So I just have no idea. Really more of a question for them, I guess. Hello, Huntsville, Alabama. Phoenix, Arizona is here. Virginia is here. Thank you. Andy passed the 501 on Saturday. Congratulations. I'm glad the exams and course notes helped. You did the hard part. You actually, that's a hard exam. It's a tough exam. The 501 exam is a tough exam. The content, it's sort of a mix. I feel like the 601 is bigger. It's much bigger, but it is, the questions on the exam are less wordy. The questions on the 501 exam are really wordy. For some reason. I think they were just trying to be sort of complete. But that's what happened. Hello, Brooklyn. It's smoky in Brooklyn. What's going on in Brooklyn? It's smoky. Hello, Maryland. My Maryland. Upstate New York. Long Island, New York. Good to have you here. Illinois. Welcome. South Africa. Brazil. Mexico City. Welcome. This is close to being microwave cookery, isn't it? Today, we're going to make a chicken. Hello, Ireland. Nebraska. Atlanta. Hey, Atlanta, Georgia. St. Louis. St. Louis. Don't say St. Louis. They get angry. Austin, hello. Palestine, Saudi Arabia. London, Canada. The same place. London, Canada. Not London and Canada. London, Ontario, Canada. Baltimore, Union City, Jersey. New Jersey. Grenada. Really? That's awesome. Senegal, India. Sydney. Is it midnight in Sydney? Sorry about that. Yeah, I guess it's about right, isn't it? 12 noon Eastern on daylight saving time. I guess that's it. One of those things. I do check Twitter when it's a live stream day. There's about 2 hours of work that I do prior to going live. So I know I get a lot of emails and tweets and messages in those 2 hour time frames that I have to wait until after this because there's just so much going on to get everything ready. I'm not even sure it's ready to go, but here we are, whether it is or not. We're going to do this. Do I have the right presentation up? Let's find out, everybody. Well, it looks right. I don't know if it is right, but it looks right. It looks like some good stuff in there. So we'll go with that. So that works well too. We have people here attending on the moon. That's useful too. Wouldn't that be neat though? Get some folks on the moon. Will we need an IT person for the moon? We probably will. You can imagine taking that help desk call. Hi, we have a leak. We're losing oxygen. Could you have someone come down? Hello, Texas. Unable to get a job with your bachelor's degree. Will the Security Plus help you? Well, it might if employers are looking for the Security Plus. It's sort of one of those things where you can't force it. You got to figure out what they want and then do what they want. So, is it okay to attend this study group if you have the 501 on Friday? We are not really doing 501 specific content, although there is 501 material in here. But everything that we're doing is definitely 601 centric. Some of it will overlap, but not all of it. Let's get, that's not what I want. I want Keynote and green light, green light, green light. Very nice. We're about ready to get started. I got a little behind today. So Lori's watching the replay and wondering, why is your pre-show only 8 minutes long when it's usually 10 minutes long? Because I was late. That's why. That's why. After all that planning and work and doing and going, occasionally I'm late anyway. So the best laid plans. And it's 12 noon Eastern time. It's time for a live stream. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2021 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. This is our study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the SY0-601 Security Plus exam objectives, and then you will go through the process of trying to figure out the answer to those questions. Not always something that's easy to do, but something we're going to try to work through today and see how well you do. And we do it live and online. You just have to hang out and participate with us. It's a very easy process if you're here live to be able to answer interactively online. Simply open up a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. It's that link that's right there on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. There is also an app for this because why not? Of course you need an app for this. It is the Socrative student app. There is a Socrative teacher app. You don't want that one. That one's for me. You want the Socrative student app, and it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right. PROFESSORMESSER, all one word. And if you do all of those things the right way, if you have typed everything in properly, you've gone to the correct URL, there will be a question waiting for you that asks this, which is, which of the following is commonly used to verify device drivers during Windows startup? Is it ELAM, TPM, RBAC, 802.1x, or HSM? Which of the following is commonly used to verify device drivers during Windows startup? Is it ELAM, TPM, RBAC, 802.1x, and HSM? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You see it right here on the screen. Please do not put any answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This will be just like we're taking the exam. We don't have any Google. We don't have any hints. Nobody's there to help us. We just have to figure it out ourselves. We will come back to this question in just a moment. In the meantime, let me welcome you to the study group. Hi, everybody. It's good to see everybody in the chat room. Thank you so much for being here. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for watching on our on-demand replay as well. During the rest of the month, you, of course, can see all of our videos that are available on YouTube. Absolutely free, no registration, no paywall. Every minute of every video is at professormesser.com/YouTube. There are also weekly pop quiz questions for Security Plus. You can find those at professormesser.com/Twitter. There are also questions, the same question, at professormesser.com/Instagram, except on Instagram, there's a pretty picture to go with it, I guess. Sometimes it's a pretty picture. I think most of the time it's a pretty good picture. I picked those pictures out myself, so I think that's the case. There are, technically speaking, 2 Security Plus exams you could take right now. Either one of them will earn you the Security Plus certification. The one that has been around since October the 4th of 2017 is the version of the exam called the SY0-501. As you can see on this page, the retirement of the SY0-501 is July 31st. This will be the last study group where we will even talk about the SY0-501 because next month it will have already been retired and everybody will be taking the SY0-601. Now, you could technically take the SY0-501 exam all the way up to July 31st, and if you pass it, you are certified for 3 years. Doesn't matter what they do with retirement of the exam. Once you're certified. You're locked in for 3 years. So those of you working towards taking that 501, you could still pass that 501 and be Security Plus certified with exactly the same certification that someone taking the 601 would get. So there's literally no difference in the certifications. The only difference is what version of the exam you take. So that's the idea. You can take that 501 exam. It retires technically on midnight. That's 11:59 p.m. on July 31st Eastern Time, U.S. Eastern Time. The last block where you could schedule the 501 exam is at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on July 31st, but I would not recommend you do that because something will go wrong and you will not be able to get it in and finish this exam in time. Do not wait till the final possible place where you could lock in an exam. I feel like I should take that one. Let me be the last one to take that exam. Don't do that because something's going to mess up. Your internet will go out. Your computer will hang. Something will break. They'll have problems on their side. Don't take the risk. Do it the day before or a couple days before so that if you do have any problems, you can always retake it the next day if you have to. That's my recommendation. It's only going to be an issue up to the 31st because then after that point, the only exam that will be available is the SY0-601. It's an exam that was released in November. This is a relatively new exam. It's a much bigger exam, but it is newer. And we expect that this is probably going to retire somewhere around May of 2024. So no worries about retirement for the 601 exam. The 501 is the real issue. Now, what's the difference between these two? Well, I did make a video back early on, almost a year ago now, on why you should not wait for the 601. This was before the 601 came out, where I did describe the differences between these two exams. So if you have been studying for the 501, you realize there's no way I'm going to make that time of July 31st. I'm going to shift my efforts over to the 601 because some of you will be doing that. There are some significant differences between these exams. And I mean significant differences. These are not simple updates to the exam. They are dramatic differences to this exam. So make sure you check out that video so you understand what those differences are. The exam itself, whether you take the 501 or the 601, is a single exam you have to pass. So no multiple exams. Just pay for one exam, take the exam, pass the exam, you're certified. It's 90 minutes long. You can get a maximum of 90 questions. The passing score is a 750 on a scale from 100 to 900. Yeah, I know that doesn't make any sense at all, but there it is. That's how they grade it. They don't actually tell us any more than that. That's as much information as we have about their grading process, which means the best that you could really do is just go in the exam, do what you can, pass every question you can, get everything correct, and hope it comes out to be over a 750. There's no way to see how you're doing in the middle of the exam. So just don't worry about the score. Focus instead on getting the right answers. The score will work itself out at the end. The exam itself is mostly multiple choice questions, but there are performance-based questions as well. Performance-based questions are questions that are not multiple choice. They are fill in the blank, matching, drag and drop, pull down questions, all sorts of questions you might run into. So anything but multiple choice. So that's the key, is to absolutely be aware that both of these types of questions are on the exam. You'll get about a handful of performance-based questions at the beginning of the exam, and then the rest of the exam is all multiple choice. So probably something you're more familiar with. Now, for those of you that are working through all of these exam types, you're trying to figure out what do you do next? What are the things you want to work on? What are the things that can help you study? Well, we've got plenty of questions available on our website. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/take10. I will be putting up some 601 questions soon so that we can add some 601 Take 10 questions into this mix, which would be a lot of fun. There's also A+ and Network Plus questions there at ProfessorMesser.com/take10. If you are listening to this video on the podcast, thank you for subscribing. For those of you that have a podcast listening program and you're not listening to this podcast, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/podcast and add it to your podcast listening program for my A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study groups. It's a great place to go. There's also on the YouTube side a series of timestamps. You'll notice I have a few of these on the screen here. These timestamps are added by my marketing manager, Lori, who has to listen to this whole thing once we're done. Everybody say hi to Lori. She is watching the chat as it goes by. Hopefully the chat will be there for her to be able to see what's going on. So that if you ever have to go back to one of the previous study groups, you're looking for specific information or specific question, you just click the timestamp. It takes you right to that spot in the video. So that might help you a little bit with your studies. For those of you that have been on our website before, there used to be a chat at the bottom of the page of the website. You'll notice now that we've shifted everything over to Discord, and boy, everybody's there now. Now thousands of people are on this Discord server. Thank you so much for showing up and joining our Discord server. You can find out more about that at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. It's a 24/7 chat. It's always there. I'm there quite a bit. So you're more than welcome to stop by, send me an instant message, to put information into the chat rooms that are there. A lot of us are there and hanging out. If you have any questions, it's a great place to get some answers. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. There's also on my site, one of the things you may have noticed if you haven't been there lately, is that there are now discounted CompTIA exam vouchers on my website. Don't go over to the Pearson VUE site and pay full price just to take the exam just because you're on their site. Get a discounted voucher from me, take that to the Pearson VUE site and put it into that coupon box they have on their site, and you've instantly saved money. It's a great way to do it. It's also a great way to support the Professor Messer website. So it's a win-win in my book. And you can get currently vouchers for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, but other people have said, we want discount vouchers for everything. So I will be adding discount vouchers for all of the CompTIA exams there. What you don't get from the Pearson VUE website or anywhere else that has discounted vouchers is a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. So if you're someone who's taken a CompTIA exam and you want to know what should I study, how should I study, what things should I think about during the exam that might be able to get me some extra points, and if things don't go well, what can I do after the fact to prepare me for the next time through? This book has about 14 life hacks in it that can help you with your studies. Some of them you may already know. Some of them you may not have thought of before. But if you purchase a voucher from my site, it's just free. I think it's a great thing to take with you. If you're getting the vouchers, it works perfect. And unfortunately, chat room, you are correct. These are only available in Canada, the U.S., and a number of U.S. territories. Unfortunately, not currently available internationally. So, but you can, of course, if you're in any one of those areas, you can get those vouchers at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier. Which of the following is commonly used to verify device drivers during the Windows startup? Will that be ELAM, TPC, RBAC, 802.1x, or HSM? Let's see how you answered this. 41% of you say it's the TPM that does that. 27% said it's ELAM that does that. 19% said it's the HSM that verifies device drivers. Only 9% said it was RBAC. Only 4% said 802.1x. Well, this definitely is a 601 question. It's new content that deals specifically with the boot process. You may not even realize when you boot up your computer all of the different security features that are built into the entire boot process. And I do have a video in my boot integrity video, section 3.2 of the 601, that talks about all of these different security checks that occur when your system is booting. For example, when you're booting, there's a bootloader that verifies that the operating system kernel that you're loading passes the digital signature check. In other words, nobody has changed anything with the kernel, which certainly would make us think that maybe something is going awry. There's some badness going on with that kernel. So if somebody's changed anything with the kernel, your system won't boot. But our question was about drivers and trying to get drivers to load. Well, there's another part of this. There are other components that we go through, the boot drivers and the startup files. And there is something called the early launch anti-malware that already runs prior to you getting access to the system, because drivers are loading before you actually log in. Well, how do you prevent those drivers from being infected? Well, you check them with malware. And it's the early launch anti-malware, the ELAM, that does this. Windows will not load a driver that is not trusted. So that's one. So those of you thinking, yeah, now I remember this from last month. This is a question from last month. This is our rewind question. Our first question of the month is always a question from last month. And although 27% of you chose ELAM, unfortunately, not everybody was here when you were here last time on the study group, or you would have remembered that. 43% said it's the trusted platform module, and it's not. It is the ELAM process that verifies device drivers. The TPM does not verify device drivers. It's the ELAM. This is a pretty important phase of the startup process. It's all in the software. It's nothing that you would need hardware to do, because it's antivirus, it's anti-malware that's being able to do that. You will certainly see things like this on the exam. You need to understand what this entire trusted boot process involves and what all the different checks and balances are before you even get a chance to log into the system. So that's the real key. The ELAM won't get corrupted because the ELAM has its own set of digital signatures. So there are checks and balances throughout the process, and it's the digital signatures, the cryptography we've built into this, that allows us to have these checks and balances. So far, no one's been able to circumvent that. We've done a pretty good job of protecting, and this has been an evolution through the years of getting all the right components on your system, trusted platform modules. We've even improved on the trusted platform modules, and then finally have the operating systems begin the process of adding these additional security checks. Make sure you're familiar with those. Those come from, as I mentioned, my video called Boot Integrity. It's from my SY0-601 course, section 3.2. We'll get you there. Well, hopefully those are things that you recognize. If you don't recognize those, you may want to go back to last month where we talked a little bit about those so you would know more about that boot process. Let's now do some new questions. Our first new question of the month is always a performance-based question, and I have one for you today that I'm excited about because we haven't done one like this before on the study group. We don't often, well, not in the Security Plus study group anyway. This is a command line question. We need to do something at the command line to make this work. And obviously with the 601, there's a lot of command line information. This question asks, retrieve the raw HTML of a web page from the command line. I've got a command line right there. Obviously, you're not able to type into that command line. It's just part of my video that's here. But this is something you should know how to do. So if you had to retrieve the raw HTML of a web page from the command line, type it in. and tell me what you got. I'm going to look at the answers on my side. What would you type in? What command would you use to be able to do that? Maybe it's something you would do. Be able to figure out the details for this. This is one where if you're getting into security, this particular utility that you would use to do this is incredibly useful. Not just for viewing raw HTML, but it can be some pretty good things to be able to do that. Now, obviously, this needs to be an answer that is based on the exam objectives of the SY0-601. So that's one that becomes important as well. Some of you are spot on. Some of you are wondering if you got it right. You got it right. I'm watching these numbers as these answers as they come in, because the answer at this link, professormesser.com/QA, for this particular answer is a command for it's a empty open command option screen. That makes no sense, but it's a fill in the blank effectively. So you'll be able to go to that fill in the blank and then put in what you think the answer happens to be. There's one specific answer I'm really looking for here. And some of these that you're doing are spot on. Some of them are a little more convoluted than they need to be. There's a very simple way to do this. And one interesting thing about this, I'll accept multiple answers if they are correct, even if they're convoluted. Now, your exam probably wouldn't, but certainly if you're ever working through things on your exam and trying to figure it out, it will give you feedback to tell you if it accepted the exam or not. So make sure that's something you're familiar with as you go through these. Again, as I always mention, please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We'll figure out the details of these as we go through. Hopefully you're able to answer this one and figure it out. Because there are different ways to do this, I accept multiple answers. And that's one of the benefits, I think, of working with Windows, working with Linux, working with Mac OS. There are different ways to accomplish the same thing. Even within the same operating system, there can be different ways to do the same thing. So let's go into the details of this question and see how this particular answer would apply back to the Security Plus exam objectives. The question again was, retrieve the raw HTML of a web page from the command line. Some of you answered netstat. It would not be netstat. Netstat would give us statistics about the network connections that we have on this particular system. That's not exactly what we're shooting for. Some of you say you would type in just the web page address. You have to have some type of utility that will process that web page address. And the one I was looking for, the one that would be the one most important if you're ever working through these, is one coming directly from the exam objectives, curl, or CURL specifically. CURL is, or curl, as we commonly would call it, is client URL. That's what that curl stands for. This allows you to retrieve information on a web page, but notice it's not the web page. This is not the actual page. This is just the HTML that would build a page if we were actually looking at this in a browser. So this doesn't actually do what we would be able to, you wouldn't be able to interactively work with the page, but you'd see all of the HTML, everything that's downloaded from that site that builds that page out, you would be able to see it in the window. So now that you have the raw data, that can be searched through. You can automate processes of, you can scrape the page, automate pulling information off of the page, and then do other things with that data. Very, very useful to have this. There are curl utilities available in Linux and Mac OS, and you can download some for Windows as well. Very, very useful to be able to do that. So I think that helps a lot to be able to have the view of what you need when you're pulling things off of these pages. Here's a better view of this, by the way. This is pulling information off professormesser.com. I think I've even changed the page since then. Immediately at the top of the page, you see the header information. There's some JavaScript or content information that's coming through. This is HTML. Well, there's some JavaScript. Yeah, see that JavaScript coming through. This happens to be the new Relic agent that loads, so I can monitor how well the website is performing. Lots that you can get using that curl command. Extremely useful, incredibly important if you're doing any type of automation. Some of you did answer wget. I think wget would be a good one to run as well. Wouldn't that provide a similar view of the page? If we were to run a wget, I'm going to allow it on my page, you would effectively, it would download the page, which I guess then you could go into a separate screen or separate file to look at, but wget pretty much downloads the HTML into a file, which wasn't exactly what we were looking for because I was asking retrieve the raw HTML. I guess technically that works. That would retrieve the raw HTML. I'm giving you credit. 100% right. wget would work in that. I don't know that wget is required to know for the SY0-601 though, is it? I don't think that's the case at all for these. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We'll have to work through the details of this. But either way, you're now automating, you're pulling that information down, you're manipulating things that you receive, you're able to interact with them. These are important things to work with. Very useful to have that. So curl's a great utility to know and one that's important for you to know for your Security Plus exam. Make sure you're very familiar with that. There are a lot of command lines in the exam objectives. wget is not in there, but that's always a good one to know anyway. Sometimes good to go outside the scope a little bit. There's so much command line and utilities in this version of Security Plus. I had to split it into 2 separate videos. That's how much more emphasis there is on the command line. With 501, there was a good number of utilities, but it was kind of the ones we already knew. It was the pings and the trace routes and the net stats. Now they've really taken it to a whole new level on the 601. So for those of you that went and got your 501 quickly and now you're certified, oh, you don't have to learn all of those. You don't have to learn what the cuckoo is. You don't have to know the harvester. You don't have to know what all those other utilities are. Proxying, any of that. None of those are in there. So you're in good shape. But if you're doing 601, these are things you have to know. So make sure you're familiar with that. Well done. A lot of people answered curl. If I go through this list, obviously I'm just sort of looking and not counting. But I would say 80 to 90% of you got that one absolutely right. So well done with your commands and being able to work through those. Let's do some multiple choice questions now. Let's work through a multiple choice question. Here it is. I knew I had one here somewhere. This question asks, which of the following provides a knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques? Is it the diamond model? Is it EAP TTLS? Is it the MITRE attack framework? Is it ISO 31000? Or is it the SSAE SOC 2? It's a lot here. Which of the following provides a knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques? Is it the diamond model, EAP TTLS, the MITRE attack framework, ISO 31000, or the SSAE SOC 2? Amazingly, none of these are made up. All of those are real things. Now, the important thing, if you're working on this, please no answers in the chat room. Please no questions or hints in the chat room with this. We're going to, of course, pretend that we're taking the exam, and we can answer our question by visiting the link on the page instead of putting it in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer will be the best way to do it. Please no answers in the chat room. And at some point, I think probably second or third, we'll make sure that nobody's able to put answers in the chat room. We'll keep working through that. Now, this is also, as the chat room is mentioning, a great technique is looking at the things you know in this list. Even if some of these things are not names you recognize, there may be some names you recognize. So you should absolutely maybe identify them and then see if they apply. And if they don't, you can throw those out and minimize the number of options. Because on your exam, you should take a guess if you don't know. You're not penalized for taking a guess. You can only get more points for taking a guess, which means you absolutely should be taking a guess. So if you don't know this one, take a guess with this one as well. Go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. There are a lot of acronyms on this exam, as the chat room is complaining about now. This is sort of the industry. I don't know what to tell you. It's not really a lot of acronyms on the exam. It's the normal amount of acronyms on the exam. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind in this industry. We absolutely do a lot with acronyms. I thought Network Plus was bad. Now Security Plus is almost right there. I should count the number of acronyms on all of these exams. There is a glossary in the back of your exam objectives. And it would be nice to know these things, but more importantly, you should understand what that acronym is describing to you, not just what the words stand for. So that's the important part of this. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following provides a knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques? Is it the Diamond Model, EAPTTLS, MITRE ATT&CK Framework, ISO 31000, or the SSAE SOC 2? The answer, of course, is curl. Curl is the answer. No, the answer, as far as you're concerned, 75% of you say it's the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. And then you have effectively a four-way tie for second place with 7 and 6% there. The Diamond Model, EAPTTLS, ISO 31000, and the SSAE SOC 2 are all 6 and 7%, which means we kind of have to go with MITRE ATT&CK Framework. If that's not the right answer, I kind of feel like we should go with it anyway. That's a pretty strong answer, isn't it? 76% of you? Well, in this particular case, we're in luck because it is the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. If you've never worked with the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, you should go look at it. It is really an interesting framework. A lot of work and a lot of time has been put into creating this. And if you're ever in a place where you're wondering, well, how does that attack work? You hear about man in the middle, or what we call now on-path attacks. How does that work? If you are working through a problem that deals with spoofing, or you're trying to figure out why this particular Microsoft-related attack does some type of elevation of rights and permissions, all of this is in the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. You can find it at attack.mitre.org. Attack.mitre, spelled MITRE. Why? I don't know, but that's how they spelled it. Attack.mitre.org. For a company that's based in the U.S., that's how they decided to spell it. I guess maybe it was available, right? Mitre.org was available, so they went with it, which I think is a perfectly reasonable way to do this. This is just a big knowledge base. You can learn so much by stepping through this. You'll get lost in there. And even John in the chat room's even mentioning on the MITRE website, there's a course on how to use the framework, like a 4-hour course, he says. I haven't seen how long it is, but that makes sense to me, that it's a big framework. It is pretty extensive. There's a lot here to be able to go through, and you can learn a lot by stepping through this. If you're getting started in security, if security isn't interesting to you, if you've now got your first security job and people are talking about the things that the attackers are doing or what they need to plan for, this will tell you a lot about the attacks and how to prevent them, perhaps more importantly. So make sure you're familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Incredibly useful, incredible amount of information just buried in there if you ever work through this. And that's why 76% of you said, yep, that's exactly what can tell you the adversary tactics and techniques is this MITRE ATT&CK Framework. And by the way, that's what you have to know on the 601 exam. That's definitely a 601 question. The MITRE ATT&CK Framework is not part of the 501 exam. Let's do one where you do have a question here that would apply to both 501 or 601. So those of you watching that are here live, that are trying to pass your 501, I finally got a question for you that we can do. This question asks, which security control would be most associated with a backup generator? Would it be, we're going to go back to that last question in a moment because people brought up a question with that. Which security control would be most associated with a backup generator? Would it be physical, compensating, detective, preventive, or managerial? Would it be physical, compensating, detective, preventive, or managerial? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this answer is. I'm going to go back to the answers that were on that last question because I really didn't drill down into the ones that were wrong to give you more about this. Let me quickly jump over. Oh, it's right here on my page. So I had a number of things there. The diamond model was that first one we talked about. The diamond model is great for laying out an actual attack. Sort of an attack has occurred. Now let's see if we can piece together what happened. Where did the attack come from? How did the attack get inside? Once they got inside, what did they use to finally use that particular exploit? And then what information did they go after? That's what the diamond model tells you. EAP to TLS is part of the EAP authentication process, has nothing to do with the knowledge base. You'll probably see EAP to TLS in something like a mostly wireless authentication, but it could be used for wired authentication as well, or just authentication in general. There's no reason to separate those out. ISO 31000 is one of the ISO standards. That specific standard does have a focus on security, obviously, but it doesn't have a knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques. That's not what the ISO 31000 is all about. And then the SSAE SOC 2 is an auditing process for security. This has nothing to do with creating a knowledge base of adversarial techniques and tactics and all of those. It really focuses on how is your system set up to handle an attack of that type. Let's do an audit. And that's the SSAE SOC 2. So those were the answers from that last question. I wanted to go through some of those so that you would at least have a perspective of why those particular questions were not right. The diamond model is its own thing. It does not have to be used in conjunction with the MITRE attack, but it is that diamond model, we've talked about it in previous study groups, is a way just so that you can lay out sort of a what happened here. How did it get here? How did it get inside? How did it move around? Very useful to have that piece. So hopefully that'd be something you can work through. Let's see how you did with this question, though. The question was, which security control would be most associated with a backup generator? Would that be physical, compensating, detective, preventive, or managerial? Let's see how you did with this one. I'm going to show the results, and let's remove my lower third there so you can see. We've got a bit of a tie for first place. 37% say preventive, 36% said compensating, 24% said physical. Then we have 2% that said managerial, 1% that said detective. So one of the questions that comes up with this, especially here, is we've kind of got three that are in the running. We have preventive, compensating, and physical. But we need to think about what security controls are doing for us and what we are able to do with a generator, specifically a backup generator. Backup generators are extremely useful if you're in an environment like I am, where in the summer, the storms come through every day. They will take out the electricity, and then you need some way, if you're sitting here in the dark, to maybe get the electricity back up and running so that you're not down for long periods at a time. To be able to do that, we need some way to compensate if we lose power. If the power is lost, what can we do? Do we sit here in the dark, or do we do something about it? If we had a UPS, if we had a battery-based UPS, we could have the UPS. That would help compensate for that outage of power. That would be good. If we had a generator would help compensate for a problem like that. So the control type that is most associated with a backup generator is a compensating control type. It's compensating because it doesn't prevent the power from going out. That's not what generators do. Generators are usually turned off, obviously. They are engines. They are literally motors that are sometimes run by fuel, sometimes run by, in my particular case, natural gas. So all of those, it's just sitting there quiet. Nothing's happening. If the power goes out, hopefully my battery-based UPSs will kick on. I have everything that's in here except my lights are on a battery-based UPS. And you've been on live streams with me before where the lights have gone out and everything's remained running because I had a battery-based UPS. The thing that is interesting about that is that the generator is still sitting there. And most generators will sit there 20 to 30 seconds before they finally start themselves. There's an ignition, they start up, the motor starts running, it gets up to speed, and finally it cuts into the normal power of your facility. I have an enormous relay that cuts out the main power and cuts in the generator. That's pretty much how all generators work. Now, when you're working in an environment like that, you need that. That's great because now you still got power. You're at least up and running again. You were able to compensate for the lack of power, compensate for the problem that occurred. It would not be a physical control type because physical controls prevent somebody from gaining access to a particular area using some type of physical medium, like a fence, like locks. Having a generator doesn't actually stop or add any additional security because it's just sitting there physically. It is a physical thing. I will agree with that, but it's not a physical control. It's a physical device, but it doesn't control anything physically. It just provides us with power, which is the important part. So it doesn't fit into that scenario or that category of physical, but certainly fits into compensating. 36% of you chose answer B, compensating, and that's why it's compensating and not physical. Preventive. If the generator was one that was always running and that it would always provide us with power and that it was always, we were getting all of our power from the generator, I guess we could call that preventive because it would prevent a power outage from occurring. But that's not how generators work. That's not how we use generators. So that would not work either. That's not the right answer. Preventive would not work. Detective means that we're able to identify some type of security event. Well, generators don't identify anything. They just sit there and wait for the power to go out. That maybe they identify a power outage. Well, that's not a security issue. They are compensating for a power outage, most specifically. So that's one that is really useful. The managerial, a generator is a thing. It's not a policy. So it doesn't fit into that administrative or managerial side of things. So that wouldn't work either, hopefully. Could I argue that I'm preventing data loss or hardware issues if a generator kicks on automatically when power goes out? No, because data loss and hardware issues are not directly a security event. It's not a security control. So that's more of a hardware issue or a data, you've lost problems with your data. It's all compensating at that point. Compensating is the real important part of that. Sometimes you can take a single device or single component and fit it into multiple security controls. I don't think this is one of those cases. I don't believe that power generators work that well, really fit into that particular piece. It's not preventive at all. It doesn't prevent anything. Backup generators don't do anything with preventing. You got to wait for the power to go out for them to even work. So they haven't even prevented the power from going out. And that's why I would not fit it as preventive. Only if the generator was always running could you possibly say that it was preventive. But of course you don't. That's not how they work. You're not preventing data loss. Don't use these terms as generic terms. These are security controls. So under the categorization of a security control, how are these particular components categorized? Don't worry about, but wait, I'm protecting my video card. That's not a security control. That's, of course, important, and it's important that you're able to protect the assets that you have in your organization, but it doesn't have anything to do with security. And we're doing security here. So that's the important part of this. That's why, in my mind, the only one that fits with any of these, and indeed the only one that does, is a compensating control. Compensating for the power outage, 37% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Nice. I think that these security controls are important things to know. There are some categorizations of these and other security controls you can work through on the 601 series, 5.1 security controls. There's also on the 601 series and the 501 series, there's also security control video as well. So absolutely, to be able to break these down. Don't ever try to, in fact, if you pick the wrong one or you're thinking about it differently, I think that's fantastic. We need to kind of take these questions, break them all apart into tiny little pieces and see if they fit the definitions that we're using on the security side. So pretty important to do that. And I think that was a good question to break through and figure out those pieces too. So make sure you're familiar with all of those security controls. If you've gone through all of my videos and you've got my notes and you've really gone through your security book and you think you're ready for the exam, but you want just one last test to see if you're really ready for the Security Plus exam. I've got the wrong picture up here with the wrong links. But on my website, if you are studying for your 501, that 501 practice exam book is absolutely still available for you until July 31st. There's also a 601 practice exam book for those of you who are taking the 601 exam. You can go to my website. There's a link at the top of the page that will take you either to the 501 practice exams or the 601 practice exams. You get to choose. And they are identical in how they work in the process because they've got you got practical questions in there for performance-based. There are plenty of multiple choice-based questions, 3 separate exams, 90 questions in each one of those. So you've got plenty of Q&A to go through. But what I like about these questions and the reason I built them this way is because I wanted questions that would really help you understand why some questions were right and why some questions were wrong. Let's take an example of one. I've got a question up here. This question is from my 601 exam book. This question A13 asks, a CISO, that's a Chief Information Security Officer, would like to decrease the response time when addressing security incidents. Unfortunately, the company does not have the budget to hire additional security engineers. Which of the following would assist the CISO with this requirement? Would it be ISO 27701? Would it be PKI? Would it be IaaS? Or would it be SOAR? Those are your 4 possible options here. This is the practice exams book. Now, if you have a PDF reader like mine where you can annotate, then you can come down, you can mark parts of it just so you can remember what you put there. But this is a PDF, so it has links inside of it that can take us to the answer pages. You can see there's a quick answer page on page 33, and there's a detailed answer page on page 50. The reason I put the page numbers there is because some people have physical versions of the book, and they just want to flip ahead to where those happen to be. So that gives them the information of where they need to go in the actual book to be able to do that. Since we're looking at this digital version, I can click on the word that says the details, and this takes me to my answer page. So here's the question again at the top. The answer is D, SOAR. SOAR stands for Security, Orchestration, Automation, and Response. And I explained to you why that's the right answer. Now, for me, I never get the right answer. I always get the wrong answer, and I'm always left hanging because a lot of these Q&A and practice exams I've run into tell me why an answer is right, but rarely tell me why the answer I chose was wrong. So I don't have a learning process there. There's nothing for me to learn from that. So in my practice exam book, every single incorrect answer has a detailed explanation of why that answer does not apply in this particular case. So not only are you learning from the right answer, I think even if you get a question right, I think you should read the wrong answers too. Because the question you get on your exam might deal with ISO 27701 or PKI or IaaS so that you can really understand why those don't apply in this particular case. And then lastly, at the bottom of the page is the link to the video that the question is based on. So if you need even more information about this, you can go, in fact, you can pop open your phone right now. You can point it at the screen at that QR code, and it will take you over to my website to the video. If you're doing this digitally, you can just click the link that's at the bottom of the page there, and it will take you to that video on my website so that you can then run through and watch the details of that. And once you're finished looking at this answer, if you want to go back to the Q&A, in my browser, there's a back button. My PDF reader, there's a back button, and then I can go to the next question. It takes me back to where I started with all of this. That is my practice exams. It's on my website. Make sure you get the ones that you're specific to the exam you're taking. This is the link to the 501 at professormesser.com/securitype. There will be a link to the 601 if you go to my website, right at the top of the page. In fact, I have the website there, don't I? Since I'm already on the page, we were just looking at this. Right at the top of the page is a 501 Security and 601 Security. So if you're taking the 601, you can choose the link for the 601 Security plus practice exams and find out more about those there. I think I've talked enough about this, haven't I? I love these practice exams. These are the practice exams I wish I had when I was taking my Security Plus. Unfortunately, I did not, but that's the way it goes. We did the best with what we had. So hopefully that can help you too. This is something you might be able to use. And if you do, of course, it's also a great way to support the website and everything else that's on that page as well. Thank you so much for that. Let's do some more. I've got more questions here that we can go through. The practice exams, people in the chat room real quick are saying, can I do them digitally? That is digital. Everything you just saw was me working on this PDF and working through them. It's not a engine. It's not a testing engine because it's a book. So I wanted people to be able to have access to this data, whether they were running Mac OS, Windows, Linux, iOS, Android, or if you just wanted something printed out. And the PDF format does that for us. Hopefully that's something that can help you too. Let's do some more Q&A, shall we? I got more questions to go through. Next one that's there. This question asks, which of the following would be the best way to randomize multiple hashes of the same data? Let's see if I can bring this up on my screen. Here we go. Which of the following would be the best way to randomize multiple hashes of the same data? Would that be SDN, FDE, key exchange, VPN, or SALT? Which of the following would be the best way to randomize multiple hashes of the same data? Would it be SDN, FDE, key exchange, VPN, or SALT? If you think you know the answer, hit that link that's right there on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Now we get to take care of some of those problems. Make them all go away. This is one I think that would be important to know. It's sort of a fundamental of security you need to know. So this is one where if you are taking your 501, this question also applies to you as well. So this is a good 501-601 question. It can help you out as you get through this. Didn't necessarily stick these 501 questions in there. We have another tons of pages. You've got 3 years worth of 501 videos that you could go through. So if you're studying for your 501 right now, go to my website. There's an entire category of 501 Security Plus study groups. And you can go back there through all of those study groups to be able to do that. Very, very useful. So you've got plenty of resources to pull from. And if you're planning to do that, certainly planning to do that before you take the 501, which is you only have 10 days left or so, less than. So this is the time to go through all of those things. So it'd be really, really useful. Yeah, after we're done with this first hour, we're going to open up the phone lines, take calls, and we'll take calls from the chat room as well. So for those of you that have asked that question 20 times already and I've not answered it, that's why, because I'm waiting for the after show and I will answer it. And absolutely, I see you there. I'll be glad to do that. That's the whole point of that after show, so that we can have that conversation, which is kind of fun. So let's see how we do with this one. I think this is a pretty good one that asks, which of the following would be the best way to randomize multiple hashes of the same data? Would it be SDN, FDE, key exchange, VPN, or SALT? Let's see how we did with this one. The answer, 86% of you say it's SALT. Are we all right or are we all wrong in this particular case? Got to wonder how we did. That's a pretty large number for an answer. Only 8% said key exchange. Only 3% said SDN, 2% said FDE, 1% said VPN, all single digits. SALT was a strong answer here. And indeed, SALT is the right answer for this. SALT is what you want to use. This is a way to randomize your hashes. It's a way to slow down the bad guys from having to do a brute force, or at least prepare a brute force beforehand. They have to now do the brute force interactively because everything is salted. So every password that is stored should be stored as a hash, should not be encrypted. Every password should be stored as a hash, and it should be stored as a salted hash, more specifically. So that's the important part, is to have a salted hash there. Not only does this help prevent things like a rainbow table attack, but it also prevents someone doing a normal brute force, identifying a password, and then finding all of the passwords that everyone else is using that are identical. So this can not only save that, possibly, from being found, but certainly might slow down the bad guys. So if let's say every single person in the organization used the same password, which of course they don't, but go with me here. Let's say everybody uses the password Ninja1, and that is the password everybody uses. Bad guy gets a hold of your hash file, but to that bad guy, everybody's password looks different because they're all salted. So that's the difference, is that there's randomization, and to the bad guy, it looks like every single one of these is different. And they're now going to have to go through every single one of these, assuming they know how it was salted. If they don't know how it was salted, it's not going to help them at all. So this is one that can really, really help you. That's from my SY0-601 video, section 1.4 on randomizing cryptography. That's what you would want to use, is some salt. There is a SDN, a software-defined networking, doesn't have anything to do with hashing and doing any of this. So I think in that particular case doesn't help you very much. Full disk encryption, a great way to store data on a device so that other people can't get access to that data when you aren't there, but it doesn't have anything to do with randomizing multiple hashes of the same data. That's not what full disk encryption does. Key exchange, very useful if you need to work with somebody else to determine what key you should be using to be able to send encrypted data, but key exchange is not used for doing any type of hashing, and certainly not for randomizing any hashing. You don't need a key for that. And lastly, a VPN, virtual private network. These days, we use virtual private networks so much, we almost know that's not what you would do. VPNs are great for securing data across the network, but have nothing to do with randomizing multiple hashes of the same data. That's what you would use. The only answer here that makes any sense, not even the best way, really the only way, is answer E, salt. That's what you would use for this. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then you want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website and click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, there is a field for your name, your email address. In the subject line, put this is the July 2021 Security Plus Study Group. And then lastly, in the body of that message on a line by itself, please put the super secret code word of the month, salt. We'll use salt. I think that's a good one. I don't think I've used salt as a super secret code word, so that's a good one. This means that in about a week, I'll be able to turn these around, maybe faster, and send you an email that contains that certifies that you have spent 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. That's what that is. So hopefully that will help with the things that you're working on. Now, if you don't need a CEU, you don't know what a CEU is, that none of that made any sense, what I was saying, that doesn't apply to you. You don't have to worry about it. But if you're collecting CEUs to use for renewals or other purposes, it's an easy CEU. You're here anyway. Why not get the CEU? Works for me to be able to work through those. Let's do another question. I've got more here. Let's step through this. Let's see how we do with this question that asks, which of the following would determine which laws would apply to stored data? Would it be diffusion, data at rest, sovereignty, information rights management, or masking? Which of the following would determine which laws would apply to stored data? Would it be diffusion, data at rest, sovereignty, information rights management, or masking? If you think you know the answer, there's your link, professormesser.com/QA. You can lock in your answer right there. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll be able to see how we do with this. The question earlier on hashing is a good one. In the 601 video, I redid the whole hashing section of the course and really broke down how we store passwords, how we store passwords with hashes, how we add salt to that, and how it changes the hashes. And I give you some practical examples of hashing some of this information. Hopefully, it brings home the topic a little bit stronger so that you can really see the differences in using hashed passwords versus salted hash passwords. It can be really useful to know. Hopefully you can work through those. See how well you do with this one, which asks, which of the following would determine which laws would apply to stored data? Would it be diffusion, data at rest, sovereignty, information rights management, or masking? It's got to be one of those, right? All of these come from the exam objectives. So these are all real things. We just need to know what they apply to. What do we do with that? Why is that there? How do each of these things fit into the big scheme of what we are working on? Let's see if you can work through the details of this as well. I've always tried to create questions that are very clear in their answer if you know what the answer is. So this, I think, is one of those examples of really knowing for all of these and breaking them down. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again, which of the following would determine which laws would apply to stored data? Is that diffusion, data at rest, sovereignty, information rights management, or masking? If we look at the results, we're not sure. 37% say it's sovereignty. 36% say it's data at rest. 25% say it's information rights management. And then everything drops off at that point. It's a tie for fourth. 2% say masking. 1% say diffusion. So if we're dealing with legal issues around data, especially data and how and specifically where it is stored, then we're dealing with issues surrounding data sovereignty. And that's because what we've pretty much decided legally is that wherever the data is stored is how the laws apply to that data. So if you are storing the data in the United States, the laws of the United States would apply. If you store that data in Texas in the United States, all of the laws around that data are specific to Texas in the United States. If you store the data in London, all of the laws about that data all are based on the UK. So there are legal issues you always have to be aware of when you're working in IT security. There are extensive numbers of legal issues. You will become very familiar with the legal department of your organization or the lawyers that you use in your organization, because there are so many times when the legal aspects of what's going on are overlapping with your IT security pieces. And sometimes these are questions like this, like data sovereignty, where we have to figure out, we've got data stored in this country, in this country, in this country. What can we do with that data? How is that data protected? What do we do with it? The other piece of this is that now we have to, especially if you're working in IT security, there are some things that may occur on your network that are clearly illegal. So another reason why you have to bring in the legal department. Some of those situations, because you're on the network, you see everything. Some of those can actually be very delicate and very important to have the legal department involved. This one relatively administrative, thankfully. Not a lot of difficulty here. We're just trying to figure out what we can do with this data and what we can't do with this data. So that's the important part too. So figure out where your data is. You will want to, of course, find out where are you storing your data? What are you doing with the data? Are we using the data legally? For example, my data, for the most part, that you are storing on the Professor Messer website, and quite honestly, you're not storing amazing amounts of data here. If you're purchasing things from my site, you're storing your name, your address, that type of thing. No financial information is stored on the Professor Messer website. The interesting part, though, is that I have people purchasing things from the UK, from Europe. Well, they have a different set of laws for data, and they'll often send me notes saying, I want you to delete everything from my purchase, which is something you will do if the data was stored in Europe or the UK. But in the US, I don't necessarily have to delete that data. Legally, I don't have to. Most of the time I do if I can. If they haven't purchased anything and they want to delete the account, yeah, I'll just delete it. I don't care. Sometimes if you've purchased something, though, in the United States, I have to keep track of that legally. The Internal Revenue Service is very particular with showing where that money came from. So sometimes I can't delete data because of my local laws. See how that works? So there's now it gets complicated. I have to have a lawyer just so I can keep track of all of this complicated data stuff. So every business has some type of lawyer they're working with to make sure you're doing the right thing legally. And that's an important part of anybody who's running a business. In this case, data sovereignty is the right answer. This is what would apply for all of the stored data, is the data sovereignty. The data at rest describes the storage of data on a media. So if you're storing information on an SSD, you're storing data on a USB drive, you're storing data on a hard drive, that data as it sits there in a file all by itself is data at rest. But having data at rest doesn't have anything to do with what laws would apply to the data that is at rest. It only applies to what the data is, not how we would act to that data. So the legalities aren't there yet. We're not talking about legal issues. We're really talking about where the data is being stored and what we would do with it. Information rights management, extremely useful to have there so that you can determine what you can do with the data, but that is about using the data. It's not about legalities. So in that particular case, information rights management would not apply either. Lastly, diffusion and masking, ways the data is manipulated or data is stored or identified or presented, don't apply to laws and the stored data either. The only answer here that really determines what laws apply to stored data is data sovereignty. That's what we were looking for. So if you answered C, sovereignty, you got that one. Absolutely correct. Well done. Now, I know that we are at the top of the hour, and normally we start our phone calls, but let's do one more because I've been talking a lot in the study group. I seem to be doing that a lot lately. So I think we should do one more question. We're in overtime. Here is another multiple choice question that asks, which of the following would be the most secure way of viewing traffic statistics from a router? Would that be SNMP v3, FTPS, SMB, RDP, or Telnet? Which of the following would be the most secure way of viewing traffic statistics from a router? Would it be SNMP v3, FTPS, SMB, RDP, or Telnet? Now, if you think you know the answer, follow that link that's right there on your page. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer, figuring out the details. This is one where if you are a network administrator, if you are working on trying to get data from devices, specifically routers in this case, you need to know how to do it safely, how to do it securely, how to make sure nobody else can see that data. And so this is the question that really is testing you to see, do I really know how to use this data? This would be good to know. Yeah, there's a little bit of Network Plus in there. But to be fair, if you're going to work in IT, security, there's a huge foundation of networking that you're building on top of with the security piece. In fact, if you go into IT security, you effectively need to be an expert in networking so that you can then work in IT security. I think a lot of people think that it's there are tons of entry-level positions in IT security. That's not exactly correct. In this particular case, we're really talking about understanding the network so that we can then apply to these IT security jobs. So hopefully that's something that can help you as well. This is a critical piece. I talk about it a lot in other study groups, but it is a critical piece of understanding what options are available for you in your career. And I think getting a foundational knowledge of the network can only help you in IT security. It certainly did for me. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would be the most secure way of viewing traffic statistics from a router? Is it SNMP v3, FTPS, SMB, RDP, or Telnet? Let's look at the results. 73% of you say SNMP v3 is how you would do this. You would not use RDP. You would not use FTPS. Both of those are secure. Even SMB in some configurations is secure. Telnet, certainly not secure. We can throw that one out. 10% of you said HTTPS, 6% said RDP, 7% said Telnet. 7%? Really? Said Telnet? I'm not doing a very good job with my videos. 3% said SMB. I think I've done something horribly wrong with my videos. If you're obtaining statistics from a router, then you're probably using something like Secure Shell. That's a good way to do it. SSH. SSH is a fine way. You can SSH or terminal into Secure Shell into the router and just view the statistics. That'd be a good way to do it. You could even, if the switch or the router supports a front end that's a web-based front end, you could use HTTPS. It's another good way to do it. Go to your browser, connect in through a secure browser connection, and be able to view statistics on that router and switch. I have routers and switches here that are web-based on their front end, and I can access those that way. But if you wanted to have this through a management station, there's automation, there are plenty of ways to do this, then you would use Simple Network Management Protocol, most specifically version 3 of the Simple Network Management Protocol, which implements security. We have encryption in the form of confidentiality. We have integrity checks. There's hashing that's in there, and authentication, so you can verify where the data is coming from. That's your 3 options for pulling information securely from a router: SSH, HTTPS, or SNMP-v3. Of those, the only one on the page that was listed was answer A, SNMP-v3. 73% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. I've never seen a router that allowed you to grab statistics using the file transfer protocol or even secure versions of the file transfer protocol, so that wouldn't apply either. That would not be the right thing. SMB, the server message block, is the Windows file transfer and file management functionality of the operating system. That has nothing to do with grabbing stats from a router. That has to do with transferring files and sending print jobs in Windows, so that won't help you. Remote desktop protocol, a Windows-centric protocol, very good for viewing the remote desktop of a device, but routers don't have a remote desktop service generally running on them. So that's not going to help you either. And lastly, Telnet, as the chat room said, it's never Telnet. So you're right. The answer is never Telnet. Telnet is an in-the-clear front end for terminal communications. Never use that either for, well, anything. Just don't use Actually, it's not true. Telnet, an incredibly capable utility to use for checking to see if ports are open, to check to see if a device is going to respond to you. There are places where Telnet is very, very useful, but not for doing anything practical that requires transferring private data. Telnet becomes more of a utility. It becomes more of the curl utility and the netstat and the NC utility, netcat utility. Sort of like use it as a cheap netcat, effectively. I think that's why it's important, especially in the exam objectives. They even tell you, just use netcat. That's really what you should be using instead of Telnet. Anyway, but Telnet, as some people mention, people still use it. It's still in use places. How scary is that? Yep. Just like anything else, though, it gets implemented, and then people use it. It's in production, and then it never comes out of production. There's no such thing as somebody testing it in production. That does not exist. Not such a thing as testing it in production. Once it's in production, that's it. You're never getting it out of there. And sometimes that happens. In this case, SNMP-v3 is the right answer. Well done. You folks really knew your stuff this time. I didn't fool very many of you with this. And that's probably because you already downloaded the exam objectives. You went out to professormester.com/objectives. You click that link that takes you over to the CompTIA website, and you downloaded and used these objectives as your checklist when you were studying for your exam. If you're not doing that, you are doing yourself a disservice. You are well behind what you should be doing. Make sure that you have a copy of these exam objectives. They are valuable. They could be the difference between you passing and not passing this exam. That's how important these are. If you don't have them, make sure you download them. ProfessorMesser.com/objectives gives you a link, so you will find it over on the CompTIA website, or simply go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It will take you right there. You'll be able to find all of those. Just another one of those tips that can help you through the exam. We do one of these study groups every month. Next month, normally we do these on a Wednesday, but you'll notice next month we are doing one on Tuesday, August 17th. It's Security Tuesday, everybody. I have something that I'm doing on the 18th. It's really, really exciting and important. I think it's a dentist appointment. I don't know. It's something like that. It's one of those where you get locked in and you can't change it. So it changes my entire world. So we're pushing it back to the 17th. So on the 17th, you can come back and we'll do another one of these next month. Of course, all the replays of all of these are available on my website, and that date might change as we get closer to the 17th. And if that date changes, you will always see an update on my calendar. You can visit ProfessorMesser.com/calendar to know when that's going to be. We've got A+ on the 3rd and the 5th. We've got Network Plus on the 11th and Security Plus on the 17th of August. We'd love to have you back. But we're not done yet. We got plenty to talk about here. If you're studying for your 601 exam, you've gone through my videos, you've noticed there are 1 million videos that I created. There's 999,000 videos I created on Security Plus, or it seems that. And because there's so much data there, I created a set of course notes that is able to put everything that's in my videos in one single document. It is the ultimate for being able to understand what you can do, what you can see, what's available in my exam. So here's the course notes. So all of my materials for all of my videos are in here. The graphics, the charts, the diagrams, the text, the information about how to do it and how it works, they're all in my course notes. And the 601 course notes are just huge. 120 questions because, by the way, the exam is just huge. The exam objectives are enormous. So I have both physical versions of my course notes. That's this dead tree that I have in front of me that will provide you with the course notes. And there's the digital version. You can get a PDF. If you get the physical version of any of my products, then you automatically get the digital version for free. So don't worry, we planted more trees. So no, this is okay. You can still have trees that are printed on because I literally planted more trees. My family does have a tree farm. We literally planted more trees for you. So 40 acres of trees coming at you. That's the deal. So absolutely, I do forestry regrowth programs. I actually do, literally do. In a 80 acres, a front 40 and a back 40. And they all got blown down by a hurricane. It's a long story. It's a great story. It's not a great story. And so I can talk to you all day about pine tree forests. Absolutely. And who doesn't want to talk about that? I guarantee you. By the way, that's the link to the 601 course notes. Should have put that in there, ProfessorMesser.com/601CN. And you can find that link on the website as well. Well, that's our hour and 15 minutes. We went a little bit over time. But stick around for the after show. I'll open up the phone lines and we'll take questions from the chat room. And we'll be glad to go through that. Don't forget about the Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube links so that you can get your question of the day and the videos. We've also got course notes and exams on the website for helping you pass this huge set of complicated exams. I think it can really help you, give you that edge to get you over the mark to be able to make that happen. Also, don't forget about our Discord at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord and the discounted vouchers on the website, ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Stick around for the after show. Thanks for being here for the main part of the study group. We'll love to see you in the next hour. Thanks for visiting and playing along with our Q&A, and we'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Let's see how we do with, I got things to click here. Hold on a moment. Let's get rid of this graphic on the screen. There we go. Let's see if I can get the phone lines up and running. If you can bear with me a moment, I will absolutely get things going. On this side, One of the things we do is we have phone lines that we get open and running, but it's on the cloud. So I have to call into my own show. You're not calling me directly. So I take a moment at the end of that first hour to start up my new show and for me to call in. The Discord link is professormesser.com/Discord. You can also hit the Discord button that's at the upper right of any page on my site. It's little Discord icons at the top. It's all these little social media icons that are up there. That's what those are for. So,
thank you for.
Well, you're welcome for me calling. Now I type some things in with # and you say,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
All right. Let's see if I can remember my 6-digit PIN. How about that, nice lady?
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. How nice of you to thank me for connecting to my own site. I guess that's how that works. That means that you can now participate. Oh, I need to change my lower third because now we got phone lines that we need to access. Let's grab that lower third, stick it on here. And now that is not it. That's the wrong graphic. There we go. Now you can join us. I will take questions from the chat room. I'm watching you chat. I see you there. But you can also call in on a telephone with voice communication. It is in toll-free number in the United States, 855-785-RJ45. That number, again, 855-785-7545 on the banana phone. If you're calling from outside of the continental United States, you can call for free using Skype because Skype does not require you to use any Skype minutes for a toll-free number like this. I'll pay for it. So call +1. Put a +1 at the beginning if you're calling on Skype. +1 855-785-7545 will get you there. That's a great way to do it. Phone lines are already lighting up, as they say. Do phone lines light up anymore? Does anybody really have lights? I guess they do if you have a physical phone. Aren't we all doing just the normal phone stuff these days? Aren't we doing like voice over IP phones? We're sort of all moving there, it seems, and being able to work through this. Maybe that will help you as you step through it. Let's see if we can get some of these questions that are coming through. Where can you find the commands and descriptions for the 601 exam? Well, you would, of course, go to professormesser.com/objectives. That's where you would find the objectives. Or you just go to Google, type in CompTIA exam objectives, and that will get you there. There was a CEU code today, and if you didn't hear it, you'll have to rewind. Well, you can't rewind, but you have to wait and watch the replay, I guess, because finding the super secret code word of the month is part of the process of earning the CEU. We just can't throw it out and figure it out. You have to watch it and being able to figure out the details. It might help you as you go through your process of earning CEUs. A lot of you don't earn CEUs anymore. A lot of you just take the CertMaster CE, and just in a number of hours, you're able to renew for 3 years. You don't have to collect any CEUs anymore unless you're already collecting CEUs. If you like to collect CEUs, you can do that. That's one nice thing about the renewal process is that there's a lot of different ways to renew. You can decide what the best way to renew is and choose the one that fits best for what you're doing. So, and some people like to collect the CEUs, some people don't. It's completely up to you and being able to work through. Microsoft is discontinuing Skype for Business at the end of the month. They throw everybody. Now it's Teams. You need to be in Teams. I don't think they're changing the consumer Skype. I think that's only for the business side, which makes perfect sense. How much money did they spend buying Skype? Billions of dollars. Why would you use that? What good is that piece? Hopefully they were able to take some of that technology and blend it into the Teams piece. But they are definitely forcing you down a road as vendors tend to do sometimes. But what are you going to do? That's just the way the business works, I guess. Be ready for it. That's why we have jobs, so that we can get everybody transitioned over to Teams. That is our new project, is being able to make that one. In the chat room also, we'll go to the phone lines in just a moment. I see you holding there, callers. Do I know when they will release the newest version of the A+, the CertMaster CE is what you're asking about for 1001, 1002, since the old one is for the 900 series. Is that the case? I don't know about when they are planning any updates to CertMaster CE. And since everything has been pushed a little bit, it's a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, you're right. It has to be the 900 series or earlier for this. So no, I haven't heard anything about that. It's a good question. Maybe I can get that question answered soon so that we can figure out when the next CE might be. But since they don't have one, you can't rely on that. You'll have to find some other way to do your renewal, whether it's collecting CEUs or taking a higher level exam or a different exam will be a great way to do it. Let's go to the phone calls. First on our list is the 443 area code. It's David. Hello, David. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Hi. Well, I wanted to call where I called you 4 months ago, February, or 5 months. I don't even remember.
I remember it so well. I don't remember it at all, but that's okay.
It was a week before I took Security Plus, and I passed.
Excellent.
Was very fortunate. I started this last August. I was in a course to train for the trifecta, and I passed all of them, so I feel really good. At the time I called, I wanted advice for how to approach the job search at that point, and very fortunately, I've been hired as a VNOC engineer, which is a job I don't think I thought of I'd ever have when I was growing up. So
that's fantastic.
But I'm very pleased with it, and I was in a course, but I don't feel that I would have been successful in all this without the outside resources such as yours. I thought that you were, your courses are very rigorous, the tests are very rigorous and very instructive, and I think it was really important in my ability to get the job done. I'm 60 years old, so and I don't think I'd taken a test in like 35 years, and I was able to do this. So, I think someone called a few months ago and said, is 40 too old? Well, I don't think 40 is too old. And I see now that 60 isn't too old either. So I just want to say I'm very fortunate. And I did want to thank you very much for these wonderful resources. And, at first when I found out about you, I didn't listen to the after shows. But I did think that the after shows are very valuable in terms of giving people a sense of what the cybersecurity environment is, and I think you also teach us to be realistic, because a lot of people I think go and say cybersecurity. I'm going to be cybersecurity, and it's not necessarily that straightforward, right? It's because, as you say, there are not that many, relatively speaking, entry-level jobs in cybersecurity.
That's the case. And that's a challenge I think that I see all the time, is that you're being marketed to online as if cybersecurity is your starting point. You just need this cybersecurity degree. You just need this cybersecurity certification, and you'll have a career in cybersecurity. The reality is it doesn't quite work that way, although having knowledge will eventually help you when you get to that point. And there are some people I have worked with and talked to who did find one of those rare few entry-level security positions that they were able to start at. But you're right, it's a challenge to do it that way. There are much easier ways to work yourself up to that level within IT. And your call is really a testament to hard work, the amount of time and effort you put into this, and the fact that, as I tell people, the computer really doesn't care how old you are. A lot of what we do in IT sort of came up today in one of the Discords I was in, is somebody was complaining, I have to start at the help desk. I hate dealing with people on the phone yelling at me. And I had to tell them, I have bad news for you, because throughout your entire IT career, your job will be to manage situations when they are occurring, and sometimes those situations are emotional. It doesn't matter whether you're on the help desk or whether you're making $150,000 as a systems engineer. You're responsible for human interaction and making people happy and comfortable, and at least telling people, no, I got this. Let's figure out how to make this problem that you have get solved. It's something that never goes away. And if you're on a help desk, by the way, where people are just calling and yelling at you, you're probably in the wrong help desk. I was on a help desk for years, and it was never that way. So find a better help desk. What a great story, David. Thank you so much for calling and following up with that. There's people in the chat room who are already saying, yes, there's hope for me. Yes, this is a great story. That's what I needed to hear. And I think that's what we always need to hear. We sure appreciate you filling us in on the details. What's the next step for you? Now that you've started this job, are there other things they're expecting from you?
Well, the truth is that there are some bureaucratic things. So I'm just studying right now to make sure that I understand the system as much as possible, because until the bureaucratic stuff is out of the way, I'm not going to have the access that I need to do the actual job. So I'm studying. I mean, it's, no matter what I learned in the certifications, is I never realized how much virtualization is a major part of the IT industry.
Yes.
and CompTIA doesn't necessarily give you a sense of it, and until you're there, you don't see it. And there were two other observations I wanted to make about the whole process. One is that, whether it's network, whether it's security, or even help desk, this is an extremely dynamic field. So, like, everything's changing, and I know you've pointed this out. There are lots of opportunities to become an expert on something that no one else is an expert on. There's so many opportunities to become necessary in your job. So, that's one of the things I really liked about studying for for the certifications. You just get a sense of how dynamic everything is. That's one thing. Another thing was, I think it was tremendous for my confidence.
That's something we often don't think about. That's absolutely true.
Right. I went in when someone suggested it, and I said, wow, okay, I'll try. But then when I got all three certs, like, I did it, right? And when a talent acquisition person asked me, describe yourself, I said, well, I'm determined, right? I did this, and I told her why I felt that way. Granted, I had IT background. I was a programmer, so it wasn't totally alien to me, but it was still, something very new. So I think that getting a sense of how dynamic IT is, and realizing that you don't have to be forced into a niche, and also the confidence. These are two positive aspects of the whole certification process. That's just my view from my little area.
No question. Congratulations on your certifications. Congratulations on the job. And you've really sort of proved to all of us that the age part is something that you can work. In fact, it can be an advantage for you in some cases. You just have to know how to position it the right way. And amazing things can happen when you put your mind to it. David, we sure appreciate the call. Congratulations again.
Okay. And again, thank you for your help. Have a great day.
You too. It's one of those, we always talk about when people call up and they say, well, here I'm in the industry. I've been in the industry a long time. I'm making this change. I'm up there in years. And we always talk about the negatives, but we never really spend a lot of time talking about the positives sometimes. And there's a good example of where the positives really make a difference. There is that gray hair factor that we sometimes talk about in IT. It doesn't apply to me so much, but it could. The idea is that you being in the industry for a long time, you working with these things for a long time, gives you a perspective of what you can do with this technology. And smart people will take advantage of your perspective. The people who aren't smart enough to take advantage, well, you don't need to be working with them. So it all works out, doesn't it? What a great call. Back to the phone lines. Let's talk to James at 325 area code. Hi, James. What's your question?
Hi. I am going to be taking my Security Plus, the 601, on Sunday.
Okay.
So, of course, I've been cramming like crazy all week.
Good.
And actually, I had a question for you about one of the points in there.
All right.
It's going to be about like the cloud infrastructure, the different services, the infrastructure as a service, platform, software, and anything as a service.
Yep.
I've watched the videos. I even took it on the A Plus, and that's just the one thing that I seem to be struggling with.
Is there is there a particular aspect of it that's really bogging down what you're trying to do, or is it something else around cloud models?
The infrastructure I got, it's when you get into platform as a service and software as a service. That gray area in between, sometimes how they word the question.
Yeah, I've seen some bad questions on it too. Sometimes it's not really your knowledge of it as much as it is how bad the question happens to be. So I tend to, you see this in my video, I kind of break it out a little bit differently now in the 601 videos than I did in the 501. Because in the 501 videos, I didn't really break it down into a lot of detail, but in the 601 I do, and give you a perspective where I show, in fact, I'll get rid of this lower third here real quick, that if you were to put your own equipment in a facility without doing any type of cloud-based service, it's just a server and an operating system and it's running on a computer, then basically everything you're doing is on premises and everything on that computer is handling everything. In fact, it's not really even doing virtualization or anything else. So the way that we start leveraging the cloud is we go out to a cloud service provider and we say, can you just give me the bare minimums to get up and running? Sometimes this infrastructure as a service can include operating system. Sometimes it doesn't. Often it doesn't. And so I put in my list that they'll give you a server, they'll give you some CPU cycles, they'll connect you to a network, they'll give you some memory, and they say, well, here's your box. I've given you a blank box. Now you have to go do something with it. I agree with you. That's kind of an easy one to figure out. Kind of fits our model in our head of what we think computing is about. And it's sort of like the getting web hosting. Web hosting is a great example of infrastructure as a service. But then we start combining in those other two, software as a service and infrastructure as a service. And if we had somebody just did everything for us, they wrote the application, they manage the back-end processes, they do software upgrades, they handle the security patches, they add new features to the product. All we have to do is open a browser, connect, and log in. Well, that's software as a service. They are effectively giving us everything we need in the software without us having to do anything. We don't have hardware. We don't have to manage the system. We don't have to manage the data. We don't have to do any programming. This is great. It's like Google Mail. It's like Yahoo Mail. It's like Microsoft Outlook 365. All we do is connect with our browser, and we've got all these features available to us. That's a good example of software as a service. Where some people, I think, get sort of trapped with this is that middle ground you mentioned with having platform as a service. Platform as a service is kind of the middle of both of those, where I'm still purchasing and using a machine that has network and CPU, but it's also got an operating system loaded on it. And it has some additional, what I call building blocks. If you look at my video, I've got these Lego blocks on the screen. I've got these building blocks because they give you everything except the application. All they really give you is they pour out a box of Legos and say, here is our infrastructure as a service. You can now use these Legos to build anything you would like. But the benefit of that is, of course, you don't have to create the Lego from scratch. You don't have to build the application from scratch. Oh, you need a login page? We'll get the login Lego and put it right there. And then when someone logs in, oh, you're doing inventory management? We'll put the inventory page. Let me take the Lego and stick it there. They've already built out the pages. All you have to do is just stick the blocks together in the right order, and you've got platform as a service. So if somebody's trying to figure out, how do I make all of these things differentiate themselves, that 601 video does provide a good breakdown of that, so that you can really see where are the delineations between each one of these, and being able to work those out. Obviously, there are other models that the 601 goes into as well, like everything as a service, which is effectively you're just outsourcing everything. You outsource your desk, outsource your receptionist, outsource your programmer, outsource everything. That's anything as a service. But for those major cloud models, hopefully that diagram in the video will help delineate those a little bit better. And the reality is you might get 1 or 2 questions on that on the exam. This is not a huge part of the exam. So don't spend months trying to break down every possible scenario of cloud-based infrastructures in the world. We're looking at this at a very high level and sort of delineating at big cutting blocks, at big cutting points of where these different models are different between each other. And if you do that, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you definitely helped at least.
Hopefully that'll help you on Sunday. You'll get a question. You go, oh, the Legos. Yeah, I'll choose that one.
Yeah, like I said, that definitely helped out. I appreciate the breakdown, the explanation. Sometimes it's just good to hear it in a live setting.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call, James. Best of luck.
Thank you.
I think if you're planning to take your exam and you just come across one of these weird problems, one of these weird correlations, the combination of technologies on the 601 exam can get awfully confusing. So make sure that you're able to step through that. And we're always in the Discord. You can always go to professormesser.com/Discord and talk to some of us about what's there. Back to the phone lines, 516 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener.
Thanks for calling.
I'm calling from the D.C. area.
Great.
So my story is I was actually studying for CISSP last year for almost the entire year.
Wow.
I was offered a crazy position that wound up falling through, but it at least jump-started my learning curve to start practicing, getting into the field of security. Now, so recently, about 2 weeks ago, my current company said, hey, I currently don't have any certifications. They said, hey, you need to get Security Plus to take this promotion within the company, which I took. So I'm starting my study now, and there's so much overlap that I feel like I'm almost confidently there to take my test. I'm just reviewing a couple things. But I always get caught up on one portion that, because it kind of is a build your own adventure. And when there's the network plus overlap into the sec plus world, it's a little confusing for me. So one thing I always get wrapped up on, like I just finished reading the SciX Wiley study guide and stuff, and they don't really highlight how to set up properly different firewalls. And there is so much to know when you're setting that up, including the IP ranges and what ports to set up and what does the traffic actually look like. And I realized I don't know how to read network traffic. I don't know how to go line by line and identify what's happening here. And I just need a good resource to just dive 3 hours in to understand IP ranges, understand what the heck I'm looking at, so I can go further analyze what's going on with these different vulnerabilities. There'd be a question, hey, what's happening here? Well, I know what cross-site scripting is. I know what CSRF is. But when you're showing it to me on an actual command line, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Right.
Can you help me out with that?
There's a number of different ways. This really comes back to getting a good set of labs to be able to work through this. And the labs can be many and varied. On some of our previous study groups, for example, I've given you scenarios where here's a network diagram, here's a firewall, build me some rules so that these things are in effect, which I think is a good way to test your firewall creation rule-based skills. But these are things you can, of course, work on and become familiar with outside the scope of my study groups. And there's a lot of very good labs out there that can step you through the mechanics of how you would build the security rule base or the ACLs that are based on that firewall, so that you can answer the question that is being posed to you, which, by the way, I have a question also in my practice exams book on building out firewall rules because of that. I think that's probably an important set of skills to know for the exam, because you could easily be asked something like that in a performance-based question. And in fact, a number of multiple choice-based questions. You get things pop up dealing with firewall rules and how they operate. So find a good set of labs for working with those, or go back and look at some of those previous study groups, look at the practice exams. Those are fantastic skills to know. Fortunately for firewalls, it's relatively straightforward. The tuples are a source IP address, a source port number, a destination IP address, a destination port number, and then whether you want to allow or disallow that traffic. Fortunately, on the exam, they don't go too deep into a next generation firewall, which can complicate your rule base quite a bit. So fortunately, they don't. They kind of stick to port numbers, IP addresses and port numbers. I don't think I mentioned port numbers in that tuple set of tuples either, but port numbers in there as well. Those are good ones to go with. I have some links on my website to labs that can help with some of those. CompTIA has a set of labs. There's a lot of people online that have labs that they can offer. Maybe it's just more hands-on. Same thing applies for the working with vulnerabilities, setting up and doing your own vulnerabilities. The ones I show in my video are, I don't remember which ones specifically I finally chose. I want to say that it's the WebGoat is the one that I ended up with. But if you go to the OWASP WebGoat website, that is one where you can run a VM, and that VM has vulnerabilities inside of it and even takes you through the process of performing attacks on these vulnerabilities. The WebGoat can be found at OWASP. That's OWASP.org, or just search for WebGoat. Yes, Web GOAT, like a goat, like a billy goat, that's where you need to, I don't know why they call it a WebGoat, but there it is. It is a very useful thing to work with, and it can really teach you a lot. It goes well beyond the scope of the Security Plus exam, but certainly covers most of the things that are in here. Another one I've worked with in the past, let me see if I can remember what the name of this one was. This is really, really complicated to do on the fly. Let's see if I can. It's called the Damn Vulnerable Web App. Is that what it's? Yeah, DVWA. The Gosh Darn Vulnerable Web Application. We'll try to keep it friendly in here. That's a good one to go with too. That one I think is sort of older, and I ended up not using it in the videos because it did not quite have all of the things I wanted, but is a good one to work through if you're working around some of those applications. This is also a really good one to use if you want to go back and look at some of the things that maybe WebGoat doesn't do. There's some others out there too that have intentionally vulnerable applications that you might be able to work with too. So you may get away with not having to purchase a set of labs, but instead use a set of labs that are already set up. And by the way, if you are running things like WebGoat and you're just getting to a point where you can't figure out how to break into the app, I guarantee you there's a YouTube video of someone demonstrating how to use that WebGoat module to break into the app. So you can pull from different resources, and it's a very easy and inexpensive way to start doing some hands-on on your own computer in a way that's not going to put your own system at risk.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call. I think if you're ever trying to find a way to make these things come to life, a lot of people have done a lot of work already that can really help us. WebGoat's the one I think I ended up using, and the lessons they have are extensive. In fact, let's go to the GitHub page for WebGoat and break this down. And so all of these lessons that they have, let me go to the main page. And they break it down for you and show you, here's how you run it. You can run it in Docker. You can run it as a standalone JRE. You can run it directly from the source. And then they break down all of the different, inside of the app, breaks down all of the different categories of things that you can play around with. It really is valuable, and being able to work through it. Hopefully that's one that you can pull that up, get it running relatively quickly, and use that to for free work through a set of labs. That's really going to help you, I think. Let's go to the Florida connection, 407 area code. Hello, Orlando. Which name are you calling from?
Hey, Professor, this is Freddie.
Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Yes. Yes, I got a question because my question is I have a certificate for Network Plus and Security Plus, but unfortunately I wasn't able to use it. I got it like 5 years ago. Too bad I wasn't really focusing on that because I was pretty much like, I'm happy with my job. I mean,
okay.
But after 5 years of working, it seems like I did not improve, or there was no more room for me to move up. Well, maybe because of bureaucracy or something. I don't know.
Right.
So I'm thinking of retaking my Network Plus and Security Plus. So I want to know what's the process now. Because the last time I had it was like 5 years ago. And I've heard that they have like renewal or something.
Well, there are certainly newer versions of the certification available. For example, for the Network Plus, the current version is the N10007. In fact, there's a new version of Network Plus. The exam is going to be updated in September, so the N10008. We're at the end of July now, so 2 months away, we're going to get a new Network Plus. I don't necessarily recommend waiting for something like that, but if you know that it's going to take a while for you to go through the study process and it's not a time constraint thing, then you may want to start with the newer version of the Network Plus and take that version. The other piece that you will run into is the Security Plus. That's obviously new. That one came out in November. The process, though, hasn't changed. The only thing that's really changed are the set of exam objectives, and now you can take it online as well as at a testing center. It used to be you can only take it at a testing center. Now you've got a choice. You can take it at a testing center or take it online. But the process is the same. The process for renewal is the same. The process for taking the exam is identical. Not much has changed with the mechanics. The only thing that's really changed is the information you need to know for your exam.
Those resources for my Network Plus and Security Plus, are they all available on your website for me to download or review or buy?
I have, of course, all of my training videos are always available to watch for free online, every minute of every video of every course. That's by design. Some people like to have additional course notes, additional practice exams. They like to have downloadable versions of the videos, or they'd like downloadable versions in MP3 formats. Those types of things are available for purchase, additional purchase on my website. But hopefully the pricing of those is one that's, you can tell I've tried to make very aggressive so that you're not spending a lot of money on training materials if it's something that you don't need. A lot of people do find purchasing a book from Amazon, watching the videos, and they go take their course, go take the exam. Other people need additional study materials, which is fine as well. Some people like to get as many things as they can from many different sides to be able to learn everything they need to learn for the exams. So I try to put it as much as I can on my site, but you may even find that going outside of my site and finding other materials might fit better for your strategy. It just, everybody's a little bit different in how they study.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much, Professor.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. That's one of those where every strategy, everybody has a different way of learning. Some people just can't read a book. They just try to read the book and it doesn't work for them. So they prefer videos. I actually like to read a book. I like sitting down with a book and reading through it, but I also like to watch videos. So it's a combination. You have to find the right combination for you, find the right resources that work for you, and use all of those. And I think what some of us have found at this point is if we're working on Security Plus, and we've already gone through A+, we've already gone through Network Plus, we're now taking Security Plus, we've got a plan now. We have a strategy now. We know our way of working. If I'm going to study for this, I'm going to need this and this and this, and a quiet room. That's the sort of the strategy. Or every night for an hour, I'm going to do this. And we have that programmed in now. When you're just starting out, you're maybe not sure. Where should I go with this? What direction? But I think for a lot of us, once you've done the first one, almost every other exam that you take, every certification exam you take, it will probably be a similar path that you choose. Maybe slightly different depending on the cert, but a lot of similarities between. Back to the phone line, 731 area code. Thanks for holding for so long, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, that's okay. Hi there, James. I'm just calling from the UK. My name's Charlie, by the way. I just had a quick question for you.
Sure.
So when going into the exam, would you first skip over the performance-based questions and go straight to the core of the exam and then return to the performance-based questions towards the end of the test? I've been using the CompTIA resources. I've been using CertMaster Learn and CertMaster Practice, and I find that a lot of the performance-based questions are repeated or if not similar. And this is obviously proving immensely difficult to revise with. And I'm very concerned with, is this going to be a big part of the test that I'm going to have to, look at other resources to try and revise the performance-based questions, or should I just be solely focusing on the multiple choice questions? What's your opinion on that?
My personal take is that I think there's value in reading through quickly the performance-based questions, but completely skipping them and going straight to multiple choice. And from my perspective, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is when I first sit down and take an industry certification exam, there's a lot of anxiety from my perspective. I don't do well at the beginning of an exam. I'm hyped up. There's a lot of adrenaline. I'm nervous. There's anxiety. I walk in the room. They put me in front of the computer. And the first couple questions I read, I can see the words. I am reading the words. They are written in English. I understand English, but yet I don't really comprehend anything that's on the screen. I just can't understand a word of what's being put on the screen to me. And I kind of have to settle down, some deep breaths, now read through the question again. It takes me 5 to 10 minutes to finally settle down when I'm in the exam room. What I've tended to do over the years is they give you like this 15-minute chunk of time at the beginning of the exam to read through the candidate agreement and sign it. And what I tend to do is I just read it. Whether I need to read it or not, whether it's necessary for me to read through the whole thing, is I just sit there and I just read through it because it's killing some time. I think it's maybe taking some of the edge off as I'm sitting in the room. So I try to just read through and spend that entire time frame before I ever get to the questions. But let's address, now that the exam has started, the first handful of questions you're going to get will be performance-based questions. That's the only place in the exam they appear, is right there at the beginning. In the CompTIA exam, for those of you who are watching and listening who haven't taken this exam before, you can jump to any question on the exam at any time in any order. Not all industry exams do this. If you were taking a Cisco exam, you start with question 1. When you finish question 1 and go to question 2, you can't go back to question 1. And you can't jump to other questions later on. It is locked in. You're on a rail. But for CompTIA, it's wide open. You can go to any question at any time. So what I tend to tell people is skip over those performance-based questions. They're relatively involved questions. There's a lot of moving parts to the questions sometimes. They tend to ask questions that are pulling from multiple domains of the exam and putting them on one page. And because of that, they're almost overwhelming for many of us when we're taking these exams. So what I do is I tend to read through it. I go, oh, here's a question about security controls in this performance-based question. Next. Oh, this performance-based question's asking me about firewall rules. Next. So in my mind, I'm remembering that one's about security controls. That one's about firewalls. At least I know what the topics are. But I tend to go through them. I tend to skip them completely and go right to the multiple choice questions. The first is that I can kind of skip the more complicated while my brain is in scramble mode and I'm not having to decipher something that's really, really complicated. I can focus on multiple choice-based questions, which, relatively speaking, are straightforward. A question and 4 possible answers. Okay, that's a structure I can deal with in my crazy state. So what that also does is allow me to settle down and go through the multiple choice-based questions. But here's the thing, is that multiple choice-based questions you're going through often will provide you with hints or, in some cases, direct answers for other multiple choice questions and for the performance-based questions. So in my mind, I'm using those multiple choice-based questions in the hopes that they're going to either jog my memory or just straight out give me an answer that I'm going to be able to use on those more complicated performance-based questions later. So my personal opinion is you skip them, you quickly go through all the multiple choice questions you can. When you're quite certain that you're done with multiple choice, you've gone through them a couple of times, you've answered every question, you've made sure you've left none of them blank, then you finally go back to the performance-based and try to get through as many of those as you can before time runs out. Now, there's other people you will talk to that have a reverse opinion. They think you should just really go through all the performance-based questions first, get them out of the way, and then work on the multiple choice-based questions. I'm not quite in that camp. They haven't convinced me that that's a better idea at this point. I think skipping them is a better idea from a pure scoring perspective. And ultimately, that's what this is about, is getting the best score. So my opinion is you skip them, you get through the rest of the exam, you use the exam to make you smarter, and then you go back to performance-based questions.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, to be fair, with the A+ and the M+, I've used your resources for both those exams. And when I sat those 2 exams, I totally understand what you're saying. You know, you get the anxiety, the nerves, and you look at those performance-based questions and you just go, oh my goodness, what am I looking at here? This is such a stress. And then I think it's, like you say, it's more the anxiety thing. But you know what, I'm going to try that this time. I think I'm going to go straight to the multiple choice questions and just sort of work backwards that way and then come to visit the performance-based questions right at the end of the exam. But no, I really appreciate you answering, and thank you for all you do. By the way, your content is top-notch, mate. So yeah, no, thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thanks for calling, Charlie.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
That's another thing that I think sometimes people get surprised by, is that there are people that perhaps haven't done all of their homework and they don't know that the exam has performance-based questions. And it's not funny, but you read these things after the fact where they're writing up their experience in the exam and they get that first performance-based question and they're thinking, what in the world am I being asked for here? Let me get through as much of this as I can. Okay, I think I answered that one. Oh, I'm glad that's over. Now let's do the rest of the rest of the exam. And then suddenly another performance-based question comes up and they start thinking, is the whole exam going to be 90 of these in an hour and a half? There's no way I'm going to be able to get through they don't know. They just had no idea that was the format. So I do try to tell people, you've got the options. Skip over the performance-based questions. Don't let it worry you. Or if you're comfortable with them, pile through them. But there's only going to be a handful. And then do your multiple choice, and I think you'll be okay. There's always a strategy that works best for you. Find the one that works best for you, not the one that works best for me. I can only tell you what I like and why, and then you can decide yourself, yeah, it sounds pretty good, or you may decide, that's not my style, I want to do it differently, and that's okay. Find the way that gets you the most number of points. I don't care. I don't have a dog in that hunt. You find the way that works for you. Whatever it takes for you to pass the exam, do it that way. That's the important part. Back to the phone lines, 757 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Cyrus calling calling from Virginia Beach. I've called in once before, but I was calling for a different one. Thanks to you, I was able to pass both the 1000 and 1002. So thanks very much for your resources.
Congratulations.
I was going for the. Oh yeah, thank you. Definitely extremely useful. I'm going for the Security Plus this time, and this isn't so much of a question about the content, so as much as like the resources themselves. So like in college, I took a course for the 501, and with it expiring in a week, I'm not stupid enough to think that I can like study for a week and like get all the resources needed to pass the cert.
Right.
But I was curious. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. I was curious how much of the resources from the 501 were in the 601, just so I can know how much I can get out of this textbook while I still have it.
What a good question. And as it turns out, I have gone through and summarized every single objective from the 601. I've compared every single one of those objectives to the 501 and tried to map both of them back to see just how many of those exam objectives apply. And if I'll give you the raw numbers here so you can figure out these details. So on the 501 exam, there were 778 objectives on that exam. On the 601 exam, have I got the numbers here? So I think I have other 501 to 601. So of that, on the 601 exam, they dropped 237 of those when they made the 601 exam. So they only took 541 objectives on the 501 and brought them over to the 601. So effectively, they dropped 30% of the 501 exam. Now, what's even worse about that is the exam itself got bigger. So it increased by 30%. So although we brought over like 70% of the 501 exam, it only makes up 50% of the actual 601 exam, if that makes sense. So you're effectively got half of the knowledge. If you've studied everything from the 501, you now know half of what you need for the 601. That's what that effectively means. And some of the things you learned, you're not going to use at all. But now you've got half of it. You're halfway there on the 601. Now you have to study the other half to be able to finish up and get the 601 materials there.
I was afraid I'm going to have to learn a lot more acronyms, but it sounds like I have to forget some acronyms as well.
Maybe you'll free up a appreciate a little bit of room in your brain for the new acronyms.
Clear the RAM. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Professor.
Thanks, Cyrus.
Have a good day.
Appreciate the call. Maybe that's what we're doing, is just clearing out. I need to reboot from time to time and clear everything out to have all of those things there. On your exam, people in the chat room bringing up a good point with this, is that as far as we can tell, and this appears to be the case, there's no penalties for making any guesses on either performance-based questions or multiple choice, but this really does more apply to multiple choice, is that there are no penalties for taking a guess, which means if you get a question wrong on the exam, they don't take points away from you. But if you get that question right, they give you points. So there's no penalty for taking a stab at it, which is why I told a couple of callers ago, never leave a question blank. Always go through the multiple choice and always answer something. Don't ever leave it completely empty. There is a method on the exam you can use to flag this information so that if you're on a question, this is my strategy for flagging information. So I go through multiple choice-based questions. If I'm on a question and I know this question, it is solid. I know the question, I understand the answers, and the answer I've chosen, I think that's exactly correct. I don't flag that question. Like I'm 100% sure that I got that one right. So then I go to the next one. Now, if that particular question, I'm only 95% sure I got that one right or less, or in some cases 50% or less. Maybe I don't know it all. I flag that question. There's a checkbox on the screen where you can just set a flag, which effectively highlights that question, saying, I might want to come back to that. Let's flag that one. Put a check mark in that one. Even if I answer and I think I'm 95% sure on that one, I'm flagging it anyway. And I try to run through the multiple choice-based questions very quickly. I don't spend a lot of time. If I don't know, flag, go to the next one. Because my idea is that a later multiple choice-based question will help me remember things from previous questions. So I go through and I flag everything that I'm not 100% on, and then I go back through the questions that I have flagged. So some percentage of questions now gets put to the side because I already knew them. I'm 100%. We're not going to go through those again. But the screen brings up a list of everything you've answered, and it shows what questions you flagged. So you can now step through questions one at a time, go to the next flag question. Oh, this one actually I know now. I read it wrong the first time, or now I did another question that has reminded me what this answer is. Now I know that one exactly. Take the flag off, go to the next thing. So it allows me to really use the whole exam as a knowledge base and hopefully gives me a couple extra points. Maybe. I think it does. And then once I'm done with those, then I hop over to the performance-based questions and hope for the best. That's the strategy I use. I make extensive use. I almost over flag the exam because when I go through the multiple choice-based questions the first time, I probably have half of the questions or more that I have flagged. That's a lot of flag questions, but I wasn't 100%. I'm looking at this from the perspective of 100% knowing I knew the answer, whether it's right or not. I really think it's 100%. So that's the perspective I go to. You can decide what your level of comfort is. Maybe 50% is where you start flagging. I took the best. I don't have time. I'm running late. We're going to go with 50%. You figure out what works for you. But that little flag checkbox can be very, very valuable at gaining you some extra points on that exam. I feel like I'm giving away all of my exam hacks, but that's a really good exam hack, is using that flag box. It can make the difference between you having points and not having points on the exam. So make sure you're comfortable with using that. If you've never taken one of these exams before, you may not even realize it's there. And it's free points. So why wouldn't you take advantage of that? I think that's the way I would approach this if you're ever working through those. Another question in the chat room. The people were talking about the CertMaster renewal and who this would work for. And let's break this out and why a CertMaster CE, which is what this is called, why it would work for some people and not for others. This is a renewal process from CompTIA that allows you to effectively take an online exam or an online study CBT, computer-based training. So there's a section where you learn the material, and then they ask you questions from that material, and you have to get the questions 100% correct to then move to the next section or say that you've now gotten that one done and you don't have to do it anymore. They have 3 CertMaster CE continuing education courses, one for A+, one for Network+, and one for Security+. The one for A+, you have to have a 900 series or newer. Now, this means that for those that have taken the A+, COVID kind of pushed things back. Normally, they update these so that at the end of 3 years, there's a CertMaster CE that applies to the current version of the exam so that people that have taken the most recent version of the exam can use CertMaster CE to renew their certification. The problem is now COVID sort of pushed everything out. It slowed down the process of building these new materials, and it pushed out how long these exams are being used. Now these exams are around for more than 3 years. So if you took the 1001 and 1002, the current version of the A+ certification, and you took it 3 years ago, there's no CertMaster CE for you to use to renew it with. So you can't use this as a renewal process. That's what we meant when he's not able to use this to renew, because he passed the new version of the exam, not the 900 or earlier. If you take the 900 series, the 800 series, the 700 series, the 600 series, one of those earlier versions, you can use this. But if you took the 1000 series, can't use that. doesn't work. For Network Plus, they are saying, they put right in here that this is for the N10006 or earlier, but they're also saying those who pass the 007 will be eligible for the new version of the CertMaster CE Network Plus on September 14th. How interesting they put a date there, which makes me think that that is the date that they will be releasing the new version of the Network Plus, maybe the middle of September. We don't know that, at least not yet. We can look at maybe they did release something, we don't know about it. But that's one that tells us Network Plus people can wait until September if your certification will remain valid. And for Security Plus, that one is updated for 501 or earlier. So you're good to go if you're trying to update your Security Plus because it fits everything. The 601 is the current version. If you have the 501 or earlier, you have a Security, CertMaster CE Security Plus that you can work on. So you've got options there too. I think all of those are quick ways to renew. If you're down to the wire, you haven't collected CEUs, you haven't taken a newer version of the exam, and your certification's about to expire and you've done nothing, you can really do this. They say 4 to 6 hours. Run through this in 4 to 6 hours, you're renewed for 3 years. That's it. That's all you have to do. So that's really useful. And the cost, I think it's $150 if you collect CEUs. I think I'm right on that for Security Plus. That's your maintenance fee. Your 3 years of maintenance fees is about $150. I might be more, might be less than that. I think that's right. Somewhere in there. The CertMaster CE is slightly more expensive at $199. But if you're down to the wire, this is something that can get you through there. Now, if you've already got CEUs, you've already done the CEU process, you've already collected CEUs, yeah, you don't need to do the CertMaster CE. You just give them $150, submit your CEUs, and you're renewed for 3 years. But if some people wait to the last minute and they haven't collected CEUs, it's not easy to collect CEUs. For the CertMaster, for the Security Plus, you need what, 50 CEUs? That's a lot of CEUs from different categories. You may not have enough time to do that if say your certification expires tomorrow. Well, there's no way you're going to collect 50 CEUs by tomorrow. So what do? You do CertMaster CE. And you do it right now. It takes 4 to 6 hours, and by tonight, you're now renewed. That's why. That's what that's for. Plus, maybe you just don't like collecting CEUs. Now at least you have an option. So I think that's something to consider anyway. If you're one of those folks that's trying to figure out, how do I renew? What are we going to do? Those are your options. The renewal test this is a renewal CBT. I wouldn't necessarily call it a test. This is not a test. You're not going to a testing center. There's no proctor involved. You're not sitting in a secure room. This is not an exam. This is a CBT that you do on your mobile device or your desktop. It's on your own time, your own pace. There's no time frames. You just go through it and you answer the questions. It's very simple. So not hard to do at all. Not difficult to do at all. That's a great way to do it. If I was renewing my cert right now, I would use just the CertMaster CE. I don't want to collect CEUs and hand them in, and I'm just not that person. Would it be less expensive? Yes, it would. Would it probably be better for me? Yeah, it probably would be if I collected CEUs. But I got a lot of this other stuff going on in my world. So this is the fastest way to do it, and I'm willing to pay just a little bit more for the speed. So that's really the focus there. In fact, I think it's priced too low. It should probably be priced more, but they didn't. So take advantage of that. Be a great way to do it. In the chat room, Andrew, thank you for the $5 super chat. We appreciate that. The question Andrew has is 501 or 601, which is harder? Well, there's no question the 601 is a bigger exam. I just mentioned that the exam is 30% larger than the 501. So there's more material to study. Therefore, there is more complexity in learning everything you need to know. And some of the material in the 601 is a little more complex than the 501, which I say puts it into a little bit harder category than the 501, 30% harder. It's 30% more content, maybe 30% harder to learn all of that content if you want to do a one-to-one. The 501 is an exam that is going to be retired on July 31st. As we sit here and make this video, what is today, the 21st? You got 10 days. Less than, because we're in the middle of the 21st. You have 9 days, 9.5 days to study and pass an exam that on average takes people 2 to 3 months. If you're starting right now, there's no way you're going to get through the 501 material without having some type of prior knowledge in the industry. And by some type, I mean a lot of prior knowledge in the industry. So the 501 is going away in a week and a half. You'll never see it again. So if you're beginning your Security Plus study process now, the 501 is much more difficult because you're never going to be able to learn everything you need to learn in 9 days. So now if you've already been studying, if you've already been working on your 501, you've already been putting some of those things away for months, then you may be able to finish up that exam and pass it before it retires. So that may be useful. But if you're just starting out, don't do the 501, do the 601. Is the 601 harder? A little bit. But there's no way you're going to pass the 501 in time. The 601 is what we're left with. So that's why I tell people. Now, on the exam itself, I feel like the exam difficulty is similar to the difficulty of the 501. So the difficulty level of the questions and the answers is similar to the 501. In fact, the questions are actually written a little bit better in the 601, I think. So in some ways, the actual exam might be a little bit easier to comprehend because there's less to read. I think I'm splitting hairs at this point, though. To get to the point of the exam, you had to study 30% more content. So it is a little bit more difficult to get through. That's sort of the pluses and minuses. The reality is right now, of course, that if you are studying, you're ready to start your process for Security Plus, don't even look at 501. It's not an option for you. You should be studying 601 material and make sure all your 601 material is there. In the chat room, someone asked, what's the cost of my discounted vouchers? The discount's already built in for all of my vouchers. They are on my website at professormesser.com/vouchers. The A+ Network Plus and Security Plus prices are there in US dollars. They are all at 10% discounts already built in. So you don't need to find one of those crazy 10% codes. You don't have to hunt it down somewhere. There's no codes. There's no coupons. You don't have to play a coupon game. That drives me crazy. I just need a discount. Well, it's already there and built in. So that's the way to do it, is to go to professormesser.com/vouchers and just take down the discount. And plus you get, of course, if you're there, you'll also see my exam hacks ebook is available for you to download immediately after you purchase that. So that's why I think. So another question in the chat room, if you write the 501 part 1 and 2 and make it through only part 1 before the retirement date, does that render the other worthless? Well, here's what's easy. There's not a part 1 and part 2. This isn't like the A+ exam. For the 501 exam, just one exam. 601 is a separate exam. You pick one or the other. You don't take both. So if you're ready to take the 501 and you know everything there is to know from the 501 exam objectives, you just take that one exam. If you pass it, you're done. You're certified for 3 years. That's it. If you don't pass it and July 31st hits and they retire the exam, well, then you're going to have to start over with the 601, which you really don't want to do. Don't do that. I would say that if you're just getting started, go to the 601, focus on that, and I think you'll be fine. Also in the chat room, will I ever offer other vouchers, such as Cloud Plus or Linux Plus, or even other vendors' tests? Well, I've looked at other vendors, and I've looked at other CompTIA. The other CompTIA vouchers I'm hoping to add relatively shortly. I'm working on that right now. So I am absolutely planning to offer vouchers for all of CompTIA's exams so that there's an option there that you can use to get some discounts. The other vendors, though, it's a little bit different. So let's take, for example, Cisco. Cisco is a company that also has certification exams. They will allow their partners to resell those certification exams to people taking the exam at a discount. But to qualify to resell their vouchers, you have to be Cisco partner certified, which requires that you have a certain number of employees working for you that have a certain level of certification. Well, I don't know if you've looked around here, but there's not a lot of other people in this room that are here. I don't have a grouping of employees that are going to be Cisco certified. So it just doesn't apply to me. So in some cases, I can't resell or provide vouchers for other manufacturers because they simply won't allow me to. That's okay. I'm a little torn up about it. It's all right. But it's okay. It's not a make or break for me. We're okay. It's all right. And I might still do Cisco material or Microsoft material or other manufacturers' certification material without being able to provide vouchers or discounts on the vouchers. That's okay. CompTIA is they've been great to work with. They've been great to partner with for these vouchers and offer even the ability of me to have these discounts for you. It just goes to show you, in that particular case, they're better than Cisco when it comes to that type of thing. So I'm happy about it, and I'm liking some of the other products they have too, the other technologies. So I want to kind of drill into what they've been working with. Some of you know that I worked with another company years ago for CompTIA products that was bought by CompTIA. So some of those people that wrote for that previous partner of mine are now with CompTIA, still writing these great books. So I think that's one of those things where I need to get back in touch with my friends at CompTIA and find a way to discount their books so that you can get the official books from CompTIA without having to pay the full price too. So I think there's some opportunity there too. It's difficult to find good material. And the last thing I want to do is offer you bad training material. I only put things on my site that either I have created, so I know what the quality is, or I have used it, so I know what the quality is. I don't tend to just throw stuff up there and say, look, here's a book. How about this one? Here's another one. Are they good? I don't know. That's not a way to promote or even run a website or a business at all. So I want you to be able to find materials that are going to help you pass this exam. The goal is to get a job or get a better job. And the way you do that is to pass this exam. The only way you can do that is to use quality materials. And CompTIA is starting to make some very good, high quality study materials. And they're the official source of it. So I think there's some benefit there. So I still have to go through it myself though, because I'm going to read it with a fine tooth comb and see what's there and have that there. In the chat room, Aiken asks, would you say someone could write the 501 with just this video series alone and pass the exam? Well, you could, but why would you do that? First, you can't do it in a week. So right now, the answer is no. If you put 601 there, you could, but why would you do that? Why wouldn't you get a good book? Why wouldn't you get some hands-on? Why wouldn't you get some good Q&A? Which is why I created course notes. It's why I created my own practice exams. That's why I partnered with people that had labs, because I think you need all of those things to properly do this. Why would you shortcut yourself? Why would you limit yourself for something as important as a certification exam? So that's why if you watch the very first video of every video series I do, I basically tell you the same thing, which is you could use these videos and at least get a very good overview of every objective, but don't use this as your sole study source because there are other ways to study that are going to add on to this. The more resources you pull together, the more valuable all of them become. It really is important to get a good book and to get some hands-on and to do some Q&A. all these work together and they build on each other. There really is synergy there. So take advantage of that. You don't want to shortcut this. I didn't make the videos as a shortcut. You should not use them as a shortcut. So I think that's the answer I have. And to have those there. And the 601 videos are ready to go. So they're all there. Take advantage of them. Use them, but use them along with all of the other study materials that you're using to get through this. People have told me they've used just my videos and they've taken the exam and they passed the exam. But in almost all those cases, they already had some industry knowledge they were bringing to the table, and they were just using the videos to make sure they covered all of the objectives. That's not the case for most of us. Most of us are kind of starting from the beginning, so I would not recommend starting from the beginning with these things. Try to focus your efforts. Let's go to the phone calls, the 210 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Aline.
Hi, thanks for calling. What's your question?
Okay, my question is that I'm a college graduate. Like, I have 2 years experience, and I've only been able to get like help desk positions, and those are like contracts for a year. And I was wondering, if I get a security class, will that help me? And if it doesn't, what can I do so that I can get something long term?
Well, I think you've got a pretty good head start. I mean, it sounds to me that you've got some formal knowledge, some formal degrees, the 2-year degree that you can rely on. And on top of that, you've got at least some practical IT experience, because we almost all start at the help desk or some comparable job in IT. We all start down there at the bottom. And Aline, if you've worked through the process of, you've got your practical knowledge, you've got your formal education, you've now got some practical knowledge because you've sat on a help desk. The help desk is the first step. That's your foot in the door. That's your point where you're going to jump from there. You're going to propel from that help desk position. And almost everybody does that as you get into that help desk. But you should, at that point, become a sponge. You should start learning everything you can about everything around you. If you work in a Microsoft environment, you learn as much as you can about Microsoft. You have Linux, work as much as you can about Linux. If you are trying to learn about the networking side, you learn as much as you can about the network, because now you can move up from the help desk and move into one of those other positions. Now, in the help desk job that you have, are there options within your current company that would allow you to move into some of these other areas?
Yeah, but they require me together. Like, they want you to have certification. And the problem is, like, every time when I get a job, I kind of get lazy and then stop studying. So my other question is, should I just, like, during this time that I don't have a job, I save up money for like 6 months. Should I just don't get a job for 6 months and just push it and study for all the 3 certifications and then go back again? Or should I get another job? But whenever I get a job, I usually don't study anymore.
One of the things with IT, and it's really a universal truth, is that you never really stop studying. Is once you get into a job with IT, you're constantly learning the next thing. And then you're learning the next thing. And then you're learning the next thing. And I think one of the benefits of IT, this sounds like it's a negative, but it's actually a real positive, is that you never stop learning. You never stop getting involved and understanding the technologies. And quite honestly, around you, the technologies are constantly changing. And I get that sometimes that's overwhelming, that, well, this is just too much for me to learn. You really have to put on some blinders and focus your efforts and say, I've been in this help desk position and the Linux operating system really interests me. I'm going to focus on Linux. Or I've been in this help desk position and the network side really interests me. I'm going to focus on network, and really just spend your time focusing on those things. I'm not a big fan of the shotgun method where you just go out and get every possible certification, and then you hope that those certifications are going to work for you on the job hunt. They might help you on the job hunt, or they might not help you on the job hunt. I think a better idea is to kind of reverse the process and make a note of all of the different companies in your area that are hiring and what they're asking for. You know, if you're in San Antonio, The Professor Messer website is in San Antonio because it's at Rackspace. They hire people for Linux all the time. They do their own training internally. They're constantly training their people on things to do. And a lot of companies do that type of thing, but they tell you what they expect of you. They tell you, we want you to have Network Plus. We want you to have a Linux certification or whatever it happens to be. That's, I think, a better approach, is to find out what companies in your area are looking for. And it's different depending on where you are in the country. If you're in the DC area, I would tell you, go get your Security Plus, because I know 90% of the companies up there want you to have Security Plus. In Texas, I don't know. Or in your particular geography, I don't know. So find out. In my video I have on how to get a job in IT with no experience, I give you that strategy of building a spreadsheet, listing out in that spreadsheet every job you would be qualified for in your area, and then listing out what their requirements are, just so you can see, once you've collected 10 or 15 of those, is there a correlation? In a grouping of these, is everybody asking for Security Plus? Is anybody asking for Network Plus? Are they all asking for a Microsoft Cloud certification? Maybe it's one we haven't even thought of yet, but it turns out everybody wants that. But the only way you would know is if you did a little bit of legwork and a little bit of research to really figure out what the particular job situation is in your area. And once you do that, you're off to the races.
The thing is, like, here in San Antonio, if you don't have those certifications, they want you to have at least 5 to 6 years.
Well,
and the job pool don't need experience. They want you to have the certification. So that's what I thought, like, maybe I should, because, like, I saved up money for, like, 6 months, and I know that I wasn't going to do anything. So maybe I should just study for them and don't apply for anything. And whenever I finish with them, I should go and apply for them. So you think that's wrong?
No, if you're reading through these job postings and they all consistently say, we want people to have A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or 5 years of experience, and you're seeing that everybody is asking for those 3 certifications, absolutely go get those 3 certifications. That's the way to do it. That's exactly the process you should be using. It's up to you to decide how you go through the process. If not working for 6 months and really going through all of this and earning those certs is a good strategy for you, then absolutely do that. If that works best with what you're doing, you got some money saved up, then that's a perfectly reasonable strategy. Some people come home at night and they study every night, and they just spend every waking hour studying everything for months and then take their certification. It just depends on your scenario. But if you already know that employers are asking for these things and that's something you would like to do, absolutely do. That is the right way to do it.
Okay, I was just afraid that if I stop working, then they'll be like, okay, you have the certification, but you don't have experience for like 6 months.
Well, you're not out of work for 2 years. It's a 6 month, and in fact, it's a good story where you can tell a prospective employer, yeah, I don't have any practical experience on my resume for 6 months because I want this job, and I went out and studied for 6 months, got these certs, effectively went back to school, got these certifications, and now I'm showing up with these newfound skills ready to get this job that you're offering.
Okay, thank you. I needed someone to just confirm what I'm thinking. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Aline. Best of luck.
You're welcome. Bye.
It's all about what makes sense for you. And if your studies are taking you to a point where you're going to have these certifications because everybody in your area is asking for these certs, I think it's a perfect thing. Some of you have been kind of keeping track of one of my sons just graduated with a cloud computing degree. He is now college graduate with the cloud degree, and he's now been plopped into the very busy Central Florida job market. And what he's finding is that everybody wants an A+ cert. And so he came to me and said, Dad, do you know anything about A+? I said, I don't know, son. I don't know if I can help you there. Of course, I gave him, here's your course notes. Here's your practice exams. Here's the videos. Go get those. Go get that A+ cert. Because he sees that employers want that as a listing of things on your resume. And he's sort of finding out, as we all do in this industry, that what your knowledge is and how much you know about this technology doesn't always fit into the available jobs that are out there. I came out of college with a degree in business management from one of the biggest schools in Florida, and I thought, I'm going to take this world by storm. Here we go. Going to use this college degree. Where's those six-figure jobs? And as it turns out, they don't have those for someone just out of college. You start at the bottom. You start in the proverbial mailroom. And so I started as a field service technician. And driving around, I thought, I got a college degree. I'm driving around all day, installing hard drives and fixing printers. Is this really? I thought, have I made a mistake? Is this a bad idea? But then I had to take a step back and kind of look at the bigger picture and see, no, this is just the beginning of what is going to be many, many steps up over the years. And that's exactly how it worked out. It's kind of how it's going to work out for you as well, is you have to go step by step by step to be able to make this work properly. And you have to start somewhere to be able to make it work properly. So I think that's the great way to approach this is, yeah, you probably do have some knowledge that goes beyond the scope of these entry-level positions, but find out what employers want, fit to their requirements, get your foot in the door. But that's the way to do it, is to find a way in, because then once you're in, now you can start moving around within the same company, or you can start moving around into other companies because now you've got the experience. Now someone's given you a job, and if someone's given you a job, that's a big check mark when you start looking for other jobs. It becomes pretty important to be able to do that. Well, hopefully that's given you some ideas about how you can study for getting a job or getting a better job. Security Plus is just one little piece in this big picture, this big strategy that we're working towards. Maybe this has given you some ideas. Come on back next month. We'll do another Security Plus study group. Then it will be only 601. 501 will be retired. We get to hear all the stories of the people that made it in before it retired and the ones that didn't make it so quick and have now transitioned over to 601, which is the natural process. Either way, you're in good shape. We've got resources for you. We've got study materials. We've got videos. We've got course notes. We've got practice exams, and we've got our study groups. You're always welcome to come back, and we'll get you through whatever you need to be able to pass that Security Plus exam. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us for the first hour. Thanks for your calls and your questions in the chat room in the second hour. We appreciate you being here. We could not do this without you. Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.